Picture this, the ultimate backstab. Suho, our main guy, and an absolute beast with a blade, is forced to his knees. Surrounded by the very squad he trusted with his life, his body is practically vibrating, veins turning a sickly black from severe venom. He hacks up blood, gasping for air as the realization hits him this isn't some low-tier toxin. This stuff is completely lethal. Looming right over him are two of his so-called teammates, but instead of dropping a heel, they just crack up. These psychos are genuinely getting a kick out of watching him agonizingly waste away. The party's tank hits him with a nasty smirk, mocking Suho for not playing along with their dirty little scheme. But Suho wasn't about that life. He was a true blue public servant who clung to his morals, flat out refusing to sell out and become corrupt. Get this, his raid party had literally just cleared one of the legendary 5 disaster gates, a total nightmare zone spawning horrific beasts. Yet these scumbags actually want to leave the portal wide open. They refuse to seal the deal. Their master plan? Keep the monster population alive just enough so they can treat it like an infinite farming glitch, coming back over and over. Because as long as the threat exists, they keep their massive paychecks, massive clout, and VIP status. No monsters means no spotlight, and they'd instantly lose their grip on power. Suho flashes back to all the grinding they did together, bleeding side by side, in hardcore raids, where he literally put his life in their hands. And now, they're just standing there, watching him fade out without a single ounce of guilt. They try to justify the hit by claiming Suho was the sole buzzkill holding them back. The rest of the guild was totally down for the hustle. Out of nowhere, the party's ranger steps up, casually extending a hand to offer a sketchy redo. He promises that if Suho just bends the knee and joins their racket, they'll toss him an antidote. But Suho isn't an idiot. Why would he ever trust the exact same snakes who just poisoned him and watched him rot? Plus, he can feel his system shutting down. His body is completely fried, and the venom is already pumping through his heart. He is way past the point of no return. Survival is a 0% chance. But if he's going straight to the grave, he is dead set on dragging at least one of these backstabbers down to hell with him. Running on pure adrenaline, Suho squeezes out every last drop of mana he has left. An insane, razor-sharp aura explodes around him, suffocating the area. 2 of the traitors freeze up instantly, totally paralyzed by the sheer pressure and stumbling backward in absolute terror. The female caster, sweating bullets and panicking the hardest, tries to play damage control, screaming at everyone to hold their ground. The ranger looks like he's about to wet himself, realizing they just messed up big time. And then, Suho blitzes. Blurring forward in one hyper-fast dash, his blade cleanly slices right through the tank's arm. Without missing a beat, he cleanly decapitates the loudmouth caster with terrifying accuracy. The archer scrambles backward just in time, violently yanking the healer out of the strike zone. All that cocky, arrogant energy they had a minute ago, completely wiped from their faces. Now, it's nothing but pure nightmare fuel. The support frantically spams healing magic on the bleeding tank in a total panic, but her spells fizzle out. Her jaw drops as she realizes the wound is completely blocking her magic. Shaking, she locks eyes with Suho. What she sees isn't just a dying guy anymore. Suho is practically glowing, supercharged by an insane level of raw willpower. And his weapon? It literally evolved. Now forged entirely from his unbreakable spirit, it has become the intangible sword, a mythical blade birthed from pure, unfiltered determination. But pulling off that ultimate move drains his final bit of health. The adrenaline spikes crash hard, Suho's legs give out, and his body finally shuts down. He staggers backward right over the edge of a massive cliff, plummeting straight into the abyss below. He vanishes completely, leaving behind dead silence. Cut to black. Suho slowly blinks his eyes open, and his ears are immediately assaulted by absolute chaos. People are screaming, sirens are blaring, and there's the frantic stomping of a massive stampede. A firefighter has him slung over his shoulder, but Suho is completely clueless. His brain is totally glitching out, foggy and spinning out of control. The whole scene feels like some kind of warped fever dream. The rescue worker carrying him is sprinting full speed toward a bunker, dodging through a horde of terrified, fleeing civilians. Suho's brain is lagging. The very last memory he has is taking his final breath. He knows for a fact he caught a game over back there, so how is he currently breathing, totally dazed, and getting evacuated? Suddenly, the pieces fall into place. He really looks at his surroundings. A massive portal just spawned in the city. It's a full-blown dungeon break, and hideous mobs are flooding the streets, specifically, savage green goblins. Dozens of them are swarming the block, relentlessly jumping anything with a pulse. Scanning the wreckage, Suho's eyes lock onto a busted subway sign half buried in the rubble. Sindorum Station. Boom, his mind instantly clears up. He wasn't tripping, this is the exact same location that got totally wrecked during a massive portal breach back in the day. He has lived through this exact disaster before, but before he can even process the timeline shift, A stray arrow violently snipes the heroic first responder right in the back. The guy screams and collapses, sending both of them crashing hard onto the pavement. And those bloodthirsty goblins? They are closing the gap fast. Coughing through the agony, the wounded first responder practically begged Suho to bounce. But our boy stayed completely glued to the pavement. Instead of fleeing, his gaze zeroed in on the heavy steel axe, discarded by the hero. Zero hesitation, Suho snatched it up, measured the distance, and chucked that heavy blade with absolute primal force at an incoming monster. The steel sliced the air and embedded perfectly into the creature, tapping the beast instantly, and right as the dust kicked up, reality glitched. Something bizarre materialized right in his face, neon text floating in midair, resembling a holographic video game, HUD, a system prompt. It was throwing a literal welcome party for his awakening. He stood there paralyzed for a hot second. It was giving major déjà vu, displaying the exact same interface from his past life. The screen prompted him to lock in a combat class. Muscle memory totally hijacked his hand, hovering dangerously close to the warrior icon, but he yanked it back. Nope, not this run. He slammed the brakes on choosing a path and whipped his head toward the goblin pack, who were currently cackling like maniacs. Their high-pitched shrieks rattled through the chaos. These ugly little gremlins were acting totally cocky, giggling their brains out like they already bagged the W. But our guy was absolutely unbothered. Skipping the warm-up, he catapulted himself headfirst into the swarm. He glided through the battlefield like water, dodging their clunky strikes like he was simply dodging raindrops. One overly confident mob thought it was slick and tried to blindside him, but the millisecond it made eye contact with our MC, its blood ran ice cold, because looming right in its face, Suho was already gripping that exact same bloodied axe he had yeeted 10 seconds ago. The little beast knew it was cooked. Pure, unfiltered terror warped its ugly mug. Frankly, if these dungeon creeps wore jeans, bro would be needing a fresh pair. Suho was entirely out of mercy tokens today. Before the nasty thing could even squeak, he cleaved right through it with one buttery smooth swing, silencing the monster before it could pollute the airwaves any further. And he was just getting warmed up. Snatching a rusty short sword off the concrete, he kept his momentum rolling. He had these mobs fully figured out. Sure, to a rookie, they were a nightmare, but to a seasoned survivor who had crawled through literal hell, stomping these green rats was basically a tutorial level. Light work, honestly. He turned into an absolute blender, dicing up the horde without dropping a single bead of sweat, flashing footwork and strike accuracy that totally eclipsed his past life. Give him 3 minutes, and that entire invasion force was reduced to pixels. He cleared the zone so fast it genuinely felt like he was using cheat codes. As the smoke finally cleared out, Suho inspected the dripping blade in his palm. He took a breath, realizing he had totally let the adrenaline drive. He wasn't playing 4D chess out there, he was just mashing buttons on pure, savage instinct. Sure, going beast mode gets results, but in this cutthroat reality, he desperately needed to stay frosty. Then again, the universe didn't hit the reset button on his timeline just for giggles. This was the ultimate redo, a 1 in a million shot to wipe the slate clean, and there was zero chance he was dropping the ball this time. Bam! A massive barrage of glowing notifications flooded his vision, practically showering him with achievements for unlocking advanced blade masteries. Right then, a heavy gaze snapped him back to reality. The injured hero was gawking at him, eyes wide with absolute disbelief. That flawless massacre was impossible to ignore, leaving the poor guy mentally scrambling to figure out if this kid was a legit awakened hunter. Offering nothing but a crisp, silent nod, Suho pivoted his attention straight back to the hovering interface. The debate was over. He smashed the confirm button on the healer class. Strategy locked, he strolled right over to the battered man, and calmly offered to patch up his massive gash. The dude blinked, totally short-circuiting. 5 minutes ago, he was playing human shield for this teen, and now the kid was playing medic. The math wasn't mathing, but Suho didn't wait for permission. He triggered his restorative mana, and an intense, soothing aura immediately washed over the brutal wound. Blink and you miss it, the torn flesh knitted perfectly back together. The responder was flabbergasted. How on earth was this guy running support magic when he just witnessed him butchering a dungeon raid like a grandmaster assassin? Before the poor guy could demand a lore drop, the system flashed again. Time to claim his starter gear from the digital armory. Bro didn't even skim the catalog. Knowing his exact build, he summoned a basic iron longsword, the very same trusty blade from his previous life, and squared up to raid the swirling dungeon rift. That ice-cold confidence sent a spike of pure anxiety through the older man. Marching solo into a fresh gate was basically a death wish, but our MC had a massive loophole up his sleeve. Securing those weapon mastery perks prior to officially locking in his job, that was the cheat code. Any abilities grinded out through raw physical talent stayed permanently active, completely ignoring your official class restrictions. Meaning, as he scaled the levels, both his lethal blade arts and his holy magic would infinitely stack and mutate. A memory sparked in his mind. Isabella's ultimate divine aura, the absolute peak evolution of base-level healing. If he had secured that god-tier buff in his first run, history would have been a totally different script. But this time, he was flipping the board and playing his own game. He was building the ultimate broken meta, a frontline butcher who could infinitely regenerate. And as a dark grin crossed his face, he thought about the absolute snakes who backstabbed him in his past life. The fear was completely gone, replaced by pure ice in his veins. He stepped right up to the swirling portal, the exact same death trap that practically flatlined him in his previous life. Back in the day, he was basically walking prey. But today, with absolute sword mastery hardwired into his DNA, he was built totally different. Zero hesitation. He just locked in and strode straight into the abyss. The scenery warped instantly, dropping him smack in the middle of a pitch-black, suffocating woodland. A glowing holographic system screen popped up right in his face, tagging the zone with a weird title, Green Red. Bizarre name, sure, but he wasn't there to play tourist. He pushed deeper into the brush, and it didn't take long to find out why the vibe was so off. He practically tripped over an absolute massacre, a massive pile of mangled goblin bodies littered all over the dirt. Reading the crime scene, you could tell these guys weren't just fighting, they were sprinting for their lives from a way bigger menace. Their faces were frozen in pure terror. Right on cue, a nasty, bone-rattling growl echoed through the trees. He whipped his head around and instantly locked eyes with the culprits. Two absolute units, massive, hulking hobgoblins. They were casually dragging the shredded remains of their last meal. Forget those annoying little green grunts from before. These guys were the real deal. Hobgoblins are built like tanks, savage, jacked, and insanely lethal. The second they clocked the boy standing there, their ugly mugs lit up like it was Christmas morning. Human flesh is a premium delicacy in the dungeon, so they wasted zero time. Dropping their trash loot, they aimed their rusty, blood-stained blades right at him, drooling at the thought of a fresh, warm snack. But here's the hilarious part. They were totally clueless. This human they wanted to snack on wasn't some helpless NPC. They were sizing up the apex predator. The first oversized brute rushed him like a freight train, ripping its sword through the space where his head just was. Suho ghosted the attack effortlessly. Now, stat-wise, he was severely underleveled for this mob. His current blade couldn't easily chop through that leathery armor, but raw strength wasn't the play here anyway. He needed a critical hit. Blurring forward like a shadow, he closed the gap on the first giant and drove his steel straight through its eyeball. Bullseye. The monster unleashed an ear-bleeding shriek that violently shook the surrounding canopy. Being the quote-unquote nice guy he is, Suho put the beast out of its misery by snapping its lifeline completely. Honestly though, that was a total fail on his end. His muscle memory kicked in too hard, and the strike was way too lethal. He literally just wanted to farm the guy for combat XP and system skills, but accidentally one-tapped him instead. Pivoting to the leftover brute, he resolved to milk this one dry. Seeing its buddy drop dead, the second beast lost its mind, screaming bloody murder and charging with reckless, unhinged swings. Meanwhile, our boy was just chilling, perfectly dialed in, floating like a butterfly. He sidestepped every frantic slash. The giant hacked left and right, flailing like an absolute scrub. Not a single strike even grazed his jacket. In this reality, spamming a specific movement is actually a cheat code. It forces the system to hand over a related ability. Knowing the meta perfectly, he dodged a few more heavy chops until a sly smirk crept onto his face. Boom. Evade skill unlocked. But he was just getting warmed up. Time for round 2. He switched up his stance and started perfectly deflecting the incoming slashes, batting them away with flawless timing. A solid parry isn't just flashy, it's the absolute bread and butter of melee fighting and the main prerequisite for unlocking god-tier combat arts. It's an absolute must-have in his arsenal. A couple of flawless blocks later, the magical ping echoed in his head. Parry skill acquired. Sadly, his oversized training dummy was officially running out of gas. It stumbled backward, gasping for air, absolutely burnt out. Seeing the tank on empty, he gave the monster a permanent dirt nap, cleanly slicing its head off. Nothing personal, just business. Strapped with 2 brand new abilities, the adrenaline was pumping. He was itching to plunge deeper into the horde, but not because he's some battle junkie. He was addicted to the grind. More XP, more abilities, ultimate power. Meanwhile, outside the portal, the vibe was getting seriously toxic among the local raid squad. They were fuming. Word just dropped that some random dude had hijacked their legally assigned dungeon. Once the rumor hit the crowd, absolute chaos broke out. Egos were bruised, profanities were flying, and these guys were highly offended that a rogue player had the audacity to poach their turf. A few of the heavy hitters were already plotting to jump the guy, the millisecond he stepped back into the real world. No way this disrespect was sliding. Just a few blocks down, though, a local first responder was locked in a highly classified chat. He was spilling tea to a group of men in sharp suits, officials straight from the big leagues at the association. They were on a manhunt for answers, and their target subject was none other than Suho. The fireman gave them the raw, unfiltered truth. From his frontline point of view, this kid was miles above your average low-rank trash. He literally solo-wiped an entire wave of infected deadites, actively auto-healing his own battle scars while tearing through the meat grinder. Hearing this unbelievable flex, one of the suited agents just froze. The dude was absolutely floored. He showed up right on schedule, but the entire goblin camp was already reduced to a graveyard. The craziest part? The guy behind this massacre was supposedly a healer. At first, he just laughed it off as a bad joke. Pure cap, right? In his entire career, a support class dropping this kind of solo DPS was straight up impossible. But facts are facts. If this mystery dude actually solo cleared a goblin-infested gate, keeping him off their radar wasn't an option. They had to snatch him up immediately. Cut back to our boy Suho, who was currently deep in the trenches. Man was treating these hobgoblins like an endless XP farm. He glided through the chaos like a ghost, slicing off multiple ugly heads in a single, fluid motion. Every swing was surgical, with zero wasted energy. He purposely left one ugly survivor breathing. Suho flashed at a death stare so cold, the monster dipped out of there at Mach speed. All according to plan, obviously. He was using the trembling freak as bait to pull the rest of the aggro. Taking a quick breather, he pulled up his system interface. That little slaughterfest had juiced up his stats and skills beautifully. Staring down at the mountain of green corpses, a light bulb went off in his head. This wasn't just a graveyard, it was a literal gold mine. Tucked inside those grotesque guts were magic stones. Sure, they were low-grade trash, but at 50,000 won a pop? That adds up real quick. That kind of cash was definitely worth getting his hands dirty. Normally, digging through monster guts was beneath him. Ain't nobody got time for that. But let's be real, his bank account was looking way more homeless than high-rank hunter right now. So, passing up free loot was a hard no. He crouched down and started harvesting the glowing rocks from the lifeless meat sacks, stashing every single piece into his digital inventory. Brushing the dirt off his hands, he gave a genuinely satisfied smirk. Talk about a lucrative side hustle. But before he could even exhale, the vibe instantly shifted. A suffocating wave of pure, unfiltered bloodlust slammed into him. He whipped around to find 30 massive hobgoblins stomping his way. Leading the charge, the exact same snitch he had intentionally spared moments ago. Spotting their target, the entire horde roared and rushed him simultaneously. Did our guy flinch? Not even a little. Instead, he blasted off the ground like a shadow. He moved with the terrifying speed and pinpoint accuracy of a master assassin. In the blink of an eye, half a dozen bodies hit the dirt. Ugly green heads bounced across the dungeon floor. He danced through them, carving through tough muscle like it was warm butter. And right on cue, the system chimed in with that sweet level-up notification. Fresh stat points flooded his profile, surging his raw power to a completely new tier. Riding that high and having milked enough XP, Suho realized playtime was officially over. Time to wrap this up. He threw himself into the center of the swarm, blades turning into a lethal tornado, shredding the horde without an ounce of mercy. Suddenly, a brave little freak tried to bum rush him straight down the middle. Did Suho back down? Nope. A wicked grin spread across his face. He was living for this. The adrenaline was actually hyping him up, because stepping up to the plate was the dungeon boss, a level 20 chief hobgoblin. Flexing its boss status, the giant brute lunged first for a devastating strike, only to whiff completely. Trying to capitalize, a squad of lackeys attempted to blindside him from the rear, but Suho possessed literal eyes in the back of his head. He casually diced them up without even looking. Realizing raw strength wasn't working, the boss popped its debuff skill, Fear. This wasn't your average spook. It locked up your muscles and shoved your brain into absolute, crushing dread. The higher the mastery, the harder it crippled you. Coming straight from a boss, this CC attack was no joke. Honestly, seeing a psychological attack this potent inside a low-tier gate was wild. The real issue here? Suho was rocking zero mental resistance gear and had zero passive skills to block mind games. He was completely exposed to the illusion. Sensing victory, the chief roared and bulldozed forward for the kill shot. But this ugly giant messed up big time. It forgot Suho wasn't some squishy noob. Our boy was a hardened veteran who ate nightmares for breakfast. He knew the exact cheat code to break the stun. Without blinking, Suho grabbed his own blade and slashed his left arm. The sudden jolt of agonizing pain instantly shattered the paralysis. With his vision cleared, he effortlessly deflected the boss's massive swing. Then, he pulled an ultimate Giga Chad move. Ignoring the giant threat entirely, he locked onto the remaining small fry. Blurring across the cavern, he painted the walls green, turning every single minion into confetti. In less than 10 seconds, the entire mob was exterminated. The room was dead silent, leaving nothing but the boss standing. Before spinning back around, he popped a quick heal to close up that self-inflicted gash. Distractions erased, HP restored. Now, it was time for the true one-on-one. Just the two of them now. Zero distractions. And judging by the absolute panic flashing in that beast's eyes, its cocky attitude had completely vanished. The brawl exploded into pure chaos, with both of them trading brutal, earth-shattering strikes. Suho left absolutely nothing on the table, gripping his blade and unleashing massive, heavy swings. But here was the reality check. His stats were just too low. His attacks barely scratched the creature's armor, proving that rushing in like a tank was a total dead end. Time for a pivot. Ditching the brainless button mashing, Suho calculated his next move and plunged his blade deep into the monster's massive thigh. He crippled its mobility with pinpoint accuracy. Panicking, the boss immediately spammed its signature fear aura, desperate to freeze Suho in his tracks and flip the script. Too bad that trick was outdated. Once you conquer terror, it becomes utterly useless. Suho had already stared down that nightmare and completely shattered it. Completely immune to the debuff, he locked onto that open wound. He carved into the mangled flesh repeatedly, mercilessly punishing the exact same weak point. A couple of devastating, surgically precise strikes later, the massive behemoth crashed to the dirt, gasping for air and clinging to its final sliver of health. But Suho wasn't about to let it off that easy. Instead of executing the kill screen, he suddenly triggered his healing light. Yep, a pure recovery spell dropped straight onto his enemy. The battered beast, already dizzy and bleeding out, was utterly mind-blown. Why on earth was the dude who just butchered it now acting like its personal medic? Meanwhile, Suho was grinning like a menace. He had just unlocked an infinite glitch to drag this brawl out forever. By constantly shredding the boss and patching it back up, he turned the deadly encounter into his own private gym. Hours melted away in this twisted loop. Slash, break, heal, rinse, and repeat. With every single rotation, Suho leveled up his combat flow. His mastery skyrocketed, eventually pushing multiple abilities straight into the A and B tiers. On the flip side, the once unstoppable dungeon boss was now shivering in pure, unadulterated trauma. It couldn't even force itself to make eye contact with the kid. Having totally milked this run for every drop of experience, Suho hit the ceiling. The beast had officially outlived its usefulness. The tutorial was over. Wearing a deadpan expression, Suho casually lobbed off the creature's head, wrapping up the grind without flinching. Boom, dungeon cleared. Standing tall amidst the wreckage, the system crowned him the undisputed MVP of the raid. Soaking up all that sweet bonus experience, his character icon dinged level 10, a massive turning point for literally any awakened fighter. Even his starter heal spell leveled up to rank E, but the real prize? He unlocked a brand new ability called Cure. Sure, it sounds pretty basic right now, but if he keeps snowballing at this insane rate, it wouldn't be a shock if he eventually wiped out 10,000 different lethal toxins with a snap. This was just the prologue, but his trajectory was absolutely cracked. With the loot secured and the boss handled, it was time to bounce. Suho pivoted and strolled toward the glowing portal out. Back in the real world, the vibe was thick with anxiety. The rift began to violently shudder, sparking terrified whispers across the crowd. Was the raid actually over? Before the rumors could spiral, the portal rippled and out stepped Suho. He sauntered out with effortless swagger, completely unfazed by the apocalyptic mess he just left behind. Not a single drop of sweat or ounce of fatigue ruined his vibe. He was pure ice. The bystanders just gaped at him, racking their brains trying to identify this absolute anomaly, and guess what went down inside? And Suho? He didn't owe them a backstory. He just let the hype simmer. Within seconds, top-tier guild reps began swarming the scene. They were all hunting for the lone wolf who just solo cleared a dungeon. But Suho cold-shouldered every single pitch, brushing past the flashy business cards and aggressive recruitment tactics. He wasn't buying what they were selling. Instead, he carved a path through the mob and stopped dead in front of a guy rocking a sharp corporate suit. With a completely chill tone, Suho tossed out a greeting to a guy who was way above a standard paper pusher. This was the heavy hitter of the South Korean Hunter Association team leader, Young Chul-min. And based on the deer in headlights look plastered on his face, he definitely wasn't prepped to be casually approached by the guy who just broke the portal. Cut to the slick offices of the Hunter Association, where team leader Young and our boy Suho are now chilling on opposite sides of a desk. To anyone walking by, it looked like a boring paperwork session, but Chulmin's brain was practically short-circuiting. He couldn't stop rewinding to what just went down outside. He vividly recalled their bizarre first interaction, the super casual handshake, and how Suho effortlessly dropped that he was actually heading to the association headquarters anyway. Initially, Chulmin figured the kid was just stopping by to refresh his license, a totally routine errand for veteran fighters. But as they kept talking, a wild truth bomb dropped. Suho was actually here to register for the very first time. That totally threw Chulmin for a loop. He was desperately struggling to compute how a completely unranked rookie like Suho, whose class was supposedly just a squishy healer, had somehow managed to solo an entire dimensional rift. And it was his attitude that was the craziest part. Totally relaxed, munching on snacks, acting like surviving a death trap was just a standard Tuesday. Chulmin kept aggressively refreshing the kid's test stats, trying to make the math make sense. Suho gave off zero healer vibes. Honestly, his stats were screaming straight-up DPS. The dude possessed the raw muscle and killer instincts of a vanguard, paired with the ice-cold chill of a veteran brawler. The math simply wasn't mathing. But right as Chulmin started spiraling into his own head, Suho sliced right through the silence. He casually asked if something was wrong, instantly yanking the recruiter back to reality. Shaking off the daze, Chulmin launched into the standard interrogation protocol. You know the drill. Past history, schooling, the boring stuff. Suddenly, the weird inconsistencies started clicking together. Turns out, our boy Suho had actually ditched university midway through. Before dipping out, he was majoring in physical education. Now, typically, jocks from that program lock in as heavy hitters, rolling as warriors or rangers the second they awaken. Yet Suho completely swerved everyone. He actively picked the support route. His reasoning? Bro literally just despised taking damage. After dropping that bombshell, he casually broke down the dungeon raid. He laid out the timeline with zero emotion, keeping his tone flat and clinical, deliberately leaving out one massive flex, the fact that he absolutely steamrolled the entire zone. He played it cool, claiming he just scrapped to stay alive. End of story. However, the second Suho casually name-dropped a hobgoblin boss, Chulmin froze. Alarm bells started blaring in the veteran's mind. Dungeons spawning those heavyweights are absolute death traps. Catching onto the recruiter's sudden panic, Suho didn't even blink. He simply accessed his spatial storage and dumped his entire loot haul straight onto the desk. A massive mountain of drops crashed down with a deafening slam. Chulmin practically jumped out of his skin, his jaw dropping to the floor. For a split second, the recruiter totally short-circuited. Sitting right in front of him was a massive pile of monocores ripped from the goblin horde. The standard shards came from the grunts, but resting dead center was a massive, ultra-pure crystal the boss drop. Completely clueless about the insane bag he just secured, Suho politely asked if the association could cash them out for him. Chulmin tried to keep his cool, but his eyes were glued to the jackpot. It was a legendary stash. Forcing himself to breathe, he locked eyes with the kid and asked dead serious did he honestly want to walk the path of an awakened. Suho gave a single, firm nod. Instantly, a massive spark of hype ignited inside the recruiter. Fighting to keep his professional mask on, Chulmin probed to see if this was just some spontaneous teenage phase. But our boy just smiled softly and shut that down immediately. While the recruiter was internally celebrating securing a prodigy, the atmosphere in the room took a sudden, dark dive. Suho finally dropped his true motive. He didn't care about clout or chasing the bag. It was pure, unfiltered hatred for the beasts. He despised the rifts that spawned them. Back when he was just a kid, a brutal dungeon break wiped out his entire bloodline. Ever since that nightmare, he was tossed into the foster system, surviving completely solo. Initially, he figured slicing through beasts would finally cure the burning rage inside his gut. But even after catching multiple bodies in the raid, the heavy weight in his soul never flinched. The trauma refused to fade. Right then and there, a flip switched in his mind. He knew he couldn't rewind time, but he sure as hell could dictate who survived tomorrow. He refused to let another kid experience his personal hell. He wasn't swinging his blade for vengeance anymore. He was swinging it as a shield. He craved the front line, eager to put in the actual grind. That was his core drive to awaken, and he wasn't looking to sell out to a corporate guild. He wanted to enlist directly with the government squad. Chulmin was absolutely floored by the sheer aura of this kid, but as a seasoned vet, he had to hit him with a brutal reality check. He laid it out straight. The government paycheck was absolute trash, compared to the massive contracts Private Corps threw around. Surprisingly, Suho couldn't care less about the financial downgrade. As long as he scored VIP access to farm dungeons, first dibs on entry, and the legal right to legally humble rogue awakeners, he considered it an absolute win. The recruiter's brain practically short-circuited. Here is the wild part. While the state theoretically holds priority over the rifts, they usually just sell those permits off to the highest bidder. The logic is painfully obvious. Zero bureaucrats are willing to risk getting packed up for a measly public servant wage. Everyone acts like a hero on paper, but low-key, they just want a comfy desk job where they can farm a pension without ever staring down a monster. Hence the massive line of applicants begging for paperwork duty. But looking at Suho, Chulmin saw a completely different breed. This kid despised the safe route. He was a unicorn in this greedy industry, a legitimate guardian practically begging to dive into the meat grinder for civilians, a guy who actually believed in the oath. The sheer joy of finding a diamond in the rough nearly made Chulman pass out. Forcing himself to lock back in, he pivoted back to appraising the mountain of monocores. Here was the catch, though. To score an official license, rookies gotta crush both a written theory and a brutal live-action trial. The major roadblock? The deadline to sign up was already dead and buried, and the actual trials were kicking off tomorrow. But lucky for our MC, he just made a massive fan out of Chulman, and solo clearing a dungeon definitely earned him a golden ticket. On his own, he could probably finesse the higher-ups and score some special clearance. That was the easy part. The real headache, keeping Chulman up at night, the written exam. Passing that thing with barely 1 day of prep was straight up impossible for an NPC. But our guy Suho? He was built different. His mindset was simple. If a door opens, you kick it down. The only catch? Our boy was dead broke. He couldn't even scrape together the cash for the entrance fee. So, swallowing his pride, he hit up team leader Chulman to fence the magic crystals for him. And Chulman, absolute legend that he is, took the job without batting an eye. Right now, this big bro figure was the absolute only lifeline Suho had. And honestly, he respected the hell out of that. Fast forward a bit, they crushed the physical tests, and team leader Chulman wired over the cash from the crystal hall. Cut to the next scene, and Suho is raiding Chulman's snack stash like he owns the joint. The crystal payload netted him 3 million won. Toss in the tax breaks from his shiny new civil servant hunter status, and he was sitting pretty. But he wasn't done yet. He needed one more solid. He knew the association had a hidden gem of a library, and he wanted to grind for tomorrow's written test. He dropped a polite ask for access, and without skipping a beat, Chulman grinned and gave him the green light. He even played tour guide, walking Suho right up to the doors and letting him know he could bypass the ID check. Before dipping out, Chulman hyped him up for the big exam. Watching his back, Suho couldn't help but admire the guy's rock-solid loyalty. In his gut, he knew that one day, Chulman was absolutely destined to run the whole association as president. With his bro out of the frame, Suho locked onto his real target inside the library. He needed a breadcrumb from his past life. He had flashes of massive, world-breaking events, but the actual details were pure static. Human brains just aren't wired to drag memories across different lifetimes, and he was stuck in that exact same boat. But the cheat code was hiding somewhere in this room, a specific skill he desperately needed. After tearing through the aisles, he spotted an anomaly, a colossal, ancient-looking tome that literally defied the shelf space. Intrigued, he snatched it up. The second he popped the cover, a weird system notification chimed in. This book was totally alien to their reality. The prompt hinted at a hidden mechanic, something way beyond just flipping pages. Suho instantly knew the drill. Without a second thought, he hoisted the massive book over his head like a gamer unlocking a secret achievement. For a hot minute, he felt like a total clown. Absolutely nothing happened. His arms started burning, and frustration spiked hard, because he bet his life this was the trigger. Just as he opened his mouth to roast the stupid book, the system chimed again. The Library of Memories found his background lore fascinating. Cue the magic. The cover pulsed, reality glitched out, and before he could blink, the dusty archives dissolved around him. He was suddenly staring down a massive, otherworldly tree. Its roots dug into glowing bedrock, branching up into a sky that looked like a digital illusion. A giant spiral staircase coiled around the trunk, disappearing into the void. Welcome to the Library of Memories. Here's the kicker. This place grants you absolute photographic recall of everything you've ever experienced, right down to your worst nightmares. Normally, humans survive trauma by forgetting, but this skill locks you in, with a flawless, unerasable mind. The original player who rocked this power was the manager of the Hexagon Guild, an ex-employee of the Hunter Association. While pulling a study session for a career switch, she accidentally unlocked this god-tier ability by using the book as a makeshift pillow just because sleeping on her face sucked. Suho laughed at her insane luck, but felt deeply thankful she paved the way. He mentally noted to buy her a 5-star dinner down the road. A new system window flashed, demanding Suho sacrifice his own story to the library. He let the sheer weight of this ability sink in. It was the ultimate patch to fix his corrupted past memories, since human recall always fades and glitches out over time. Knowing it was the ultimate power-up, he realized getting this skill was a must to keep his past perfectly intact. A ding confirmed his lore was accepted. Instantly, a massive gale whipped around him, and the system broadcasted that the library was downloading his life files. Gravity vanished as Suho drifted into the air, wrapped in glowing runes while a mystic hologram booted up above the book. One final alert popped off, confirming the Library of Memories was officially online. It would archive his entire existence, acting as a search engine for his brain and feeding him crucial intel on demand. Speechless, Suho just stared at his own hand. Something's totally off about this recording process. It's glitchy, almost like this whole dimension is just a massive, twisted illusion. With this new skill unlocked, he doesn't waste a single second. He shuts his eyes, plunging straight back into a past raid, only to find himself staring at his own battered, bloodied body. The trauma hits him like a freight train. Pure, unfiltered rage boils in his veins, proving this isn't just a dream, this memory is terrifyingly real. There they are, the backstabbers. He glares at the pathetic cowards who stalled, sealing the gate, perfectly willing to let him die just to save their own skin. He carves their faces into his mind, vowing absolute vengeance. Suddenly, his mind drifts, suspended in a void, surrounded by endless, glowing system screens. The whole flashback leaves him physically sick. Honestly, he kicks himself for not picking a lighter memory to test drive. But then, boom, a single holographic panel flashes red with a jaw-dropping alert. The system is offering him a literal cheat code to scale up his power. Because he hit the ultimate cap, becoming the absolute first. Transcendent, the entire system is doing a hard reboot exclusively for player on Suho. His jaw drops as the digital void shatters, snapping him back to the real world. Wait a minute. Did this crazy system actually just rewind time? He flashes back to the moment he unlocked the Realm of Unity, wielding the divine sword and claiming that very first double S rank skill. Yet here he is, standing at the absolute peak of transcendence, gifted a total reset that literally no one in history has ever pulled off. Suho grins this time slip. Yeah, it's definitely no accident. Cut to the next scene. A cab screeches to a halt, dropping him off at his target location. Stepping onto the pavement, the gravity of this second life hits him. He's playing with a loaded deck now. This is his shot to rewrite history, to obliterate those random, catastrophic gates before they can wipe out thousands of innocent lives all over again. He's got to speedrun these dungeons. The clock is ticking, and slacking off isn't an option. He pulls up to a towering skyscraper. This is Nexus. Staring up at the massive glass facade, he has to admit, the place looks pretty intimidating. It's the undisputed titan of private hunter academies nationwide. Better yet, it's his personal piggy bank to fund his massive future plans. Pushing through the revolving doors with total confidence, he walks straight up to a super upbeat receptionist who asks how she can help. Suho doesn't miss a beat. He demands a face-to-face with director Kim Swa. Caught off guard, she stammers, asking if he actually booked an appointment. Nope, he shrugs, totally unfazed. He leans in and drops a bomb. Just tell her the guy who solo cleared the Sindorum station pre-catastrophe gate is waiting in the lobby. Boom. We're instantly upstairs in a massive corner office. A totally composed executive introduces herself, Kim Swai, the head honcho of Nexus Academy. He throws out his name, An Suho. She motions for him to grab a seat, giving him a deeply calculated look, while praising his insane solo run at the Sindorum dungeon. Leaning across her sleek desk, she asks what brings a monster like him to her turf. His answer? He wants a full-ride scholarship. That totally throws her for a loop. He nods, doubling down, casually dropping that he's also sitting for the official hunter license exam tomorrow. Her brain is practically short-circuiting. Desperate to make sense of this kid, she asks exactly how long ago his awakening triggered. Today, he answers, deadpan. Her jaw practically hits the floor. She aggressively flips through his paperwork, repeating his stats like she's losing her mind. So, an unregistered nobody who got his powers literally hours ago wants to take the licensing exam tomorrow, right after soloing a boss-level disaster zone? He smirks, confirming every wild detail. He even flexes that he pulled some massive strings inside the Hunter Association just to bypass the waitlist. His game plan? Take first place. Period. The sheer, terrifying confidence radiating off him leaves the director utterly speechless. Then, he lays his cards on the table. When he crushes the competition and ranks #1, he wants VIP status at Nexus with every single expense paid in full. Look, Suho isn't dumb. He knows an absolute rookie claiming the crown sounds insane. Good thing he's secretly holding a New Game Plus ticket. Underneath this fresh face is a ruthless, blood-soaked veteran who's cleared more dungeons than most guilds combined. Haters can doubt him all they want, he couldn't care less. They can take the deal or leave it. Meanwhile, Kim is sweating. She knows surviving a lethal outbreak gate completely solo requires god-tier talent, but she tries to bring him back to earth, warning him that the official exam is a literal meat grinder with a brutal, sub-20% survival rate. Suho doesn't blink. He slaps down a zero-risk guarantee. If he doesn't clinch that top spot, they can shred the contract and pretend he never existed. Hooked by his insane wager, Kim squints at him. Why pick Nexus over elite powerhouses like Hexagon or Prime? Suho doesn't sugarcoat his answer. Sure, they're physically the largest, but they've been falling off hard lately. They haven't cranked out a single S-tier prodigy in years, and their enrollment numbers are totally tanking because of it. Kim physically winces, unable to argue. Her empire is dying for a miracle, and her current roster of students is painfully mid. But if this crazy kid actually pulls off a first-place sweep, Nexus would monopolize all the massive media hype. His wild gamble is the exact lifeline she needs right now. However, she stares at him, deeply unnerved. What kind of absolute psycho walks into a boardroom and gambles his entire career without breaking a sweat? Intensely curious, she presses him, asking what kind of payout he's actually hunting for. Suho flips the script, demanding to know the exact loot dropped for the valedictorian. She breaks down the prize pool, total tuition forgiveness, a massive 30 million won cash bonus, and a VIP fast track straight into the elite Nexus Guild. A slow, knowing smirk spreads across Suho's face as he nods. A massive flex for the nation's top academy, sure, but Suho flashed a wicked smirk, dropping a bomb. 300 million won would definitely sweeten the deal. Director Kim practically short-circuited at that insane price tag, but Suho didn't even blink, laying out exactly why dominating as their star pupil, combined with the sheer, ridiculous size of this elite institution, made that payout an absolute steal. Let's be real, 300 million was pocket change for a powerhouse like Nexus, and deep down, Kim knew the kid was dead right. Gritting her teeth, she finally caved, locking in the contract, snagged the rank 1 spot, and that 300 million bag was all his. Fast forward to Suho, prowling the nighttime campus, his jaw slowly dropping as the absolute magnitude of the place sank in. We're talking bigger than a literal theme park, a self-contained city where a student would never need to step foot outside. His exhausted tour guide let out a proud little chuckle, flexing that Nexus held the crown as the most massive academy in all of South Korea. Catching those heavy bags under the guy's eyes, Suho quickly pieced together that this poor dude got dragged out of bed just to play VIP chaperone. A wave of guilt hit him, so he threw out a genuine thanks for the midnight stroll, getting a polite smile back as the guide insisted it was standard protocol for a top-tier guest. Suddenly, the rhythmic thud of a weapon caught Suho's attention, revealing a lone figure sweating it out on the training grounds, immediately sparking his curiosity. The guide gave a respectful nod, hyping the guy up as the ultimate grinder, who stayed on that late-night hustle every single day without fail. Suho's eyes locked onto Daehan, heavily intrigued, while the guide shouted across the field, playfully warning the absolute unit not to work himself to death. Flashing a humble, exhausted smile, Daehan shot back that as a third-year student, going beast mode was basically a survival requirement. Memories instantly clicked into place for Suho. This was the exact same guy he used to run life-or-death raids with in his previous life. Back in the day, Daehan was a literal brick wall, revered across the nation as an untouchable meat shield with god-tier defense. It was just a brutal tragedy when the ruthless meta evolved, leaving pure, heavy tanks completely in the dust. But watching Daehan awkwardly swinging a battle axe instead of gripping a massive shield, Suho instantly knew the poor guy was totally nerfing his own true potential. Talk about a golden ticket. Suho could fix this guy's build right now and groom him perfectly for a spot in his future squad. After a quick round of intros from the guide, Suho cut straight to the chase, questioning if Daehan was seriously locking in that battle axe as his main. The bulky guy nodded confidently, prompting Suho to press harder, demanding to know the actual logic behind that clunky choice. Daehan confessed he was gunning for the front line, and his clueless instructors had slapped an axe in his hands, claiming it fit his massive frame. The guide even jumped in to defend it, glazing the battle axe for its unmatched, bone-crushing raw damage. Suho raised an eyebrow, asking if the axe was his only flavor. Daehan sheepishly agreed, admitting he was totally useless at picking up new skills. He figured weapon hopping was just a massive waste of energy, especially since it took 2 agonizing years just to stop embarrassing himself with the axe. And even now, his moves were clunky as hell. Suho's analytical brain immediately diagnosed the fatal flaw in this whole setup. The dude was out here sweating buckets, putting in mad work, but the simple, painful truth was that the axe was basically a cursed item for his playstyle. His hustle was a 10 out of 10, but his roadmap was garbage. He should have tossed that weapon the second his stats flatlined. It honestly baffled Suho that the so-called best academy on the peninsula was blind to something this glaringly obvious, so he dropped some serious reality check wisdom. Since the system inevitably hands out crazy stat boosts anyway, forcing yourself to use a weapon that feels unnatural is basically throwing the game. Yeah, system assists can artificially carry your proficiency rating, but surviving a real dungeon totally hinges on raw combat IQ and natural reflexes. The battle axe was straight up sabotaging Daehan, sure. It hit like an absolute truck on impact. But those agonizingly slow swing animations left massive openings, and with a hitbox as huge as Daehan's, defending him was a total nightmare. That brutal truth drop hit Daehan like a physical blow, entirely shattering his entire 3-year weapon identity in mere seconds. Suho gave the guy mad props for his relentless grind, but flawlessly pivoted, revealing that his true, overpowered calling was acting as an unbreakable vanguard. He laid out the ultimate meta build, strap a massive kite shield to the left arm, and grip a bone-shattering, one-handed mace in the right. According to Suho, swapping to this exact loadout would instantly skyrocket his actual survival and threat levels on the battlefield. Panic flashed in Daehan's eyes, completely hard resetting his playstyle. A mere 24 hours before the most crucial exam of his life felt like a massive gamble, but Suho stared right through him, forcing him to really question who actually carries a raid party when all hell breaks loose. The noobs always hype up the flashy mages, but in reality, the absolute spine of any squad is the tank, the immovable object dragging all aggro to keep everyone breathing. And to dominate that role, you need a heavy shield to eat the damage, plus a blunt secondary weapon to stun-lock the mob and control the chaos. The logic hit so incredibly hard that the puzzle pieces finally clicked. Completely hyped up by the vision, Daehan committed to making the ultimate switch. A satisfied grin crept onto Suho's face, loving that this future juggernaut didn't freeze in fear, proving he had the elite adaptability to survive. Throwing up a quick peace sign for good luck, Suho watched him bounce. Then, the guide piped up, casually mentioning that Director Kim personally ordered this midnight VIP stroll, which is why he just dropped the special guest title earlier. But now the guy's brain was totally spinning. Was this kid actually a master instructor in disguise? His combat IQ was just way too terrifying for a rookie. Suho quickly played the "I'm just an instructor" card. Deep down, he totally knew dropping expert-level knowledge without a proper license looked sketchy as hell, so he smoothed things over by calling himself a private stakeholder. The official just nodded along, noting that a message had just come through. Paperwork sorted. It was time to head back to the director's suite. Fast forward to the highly anticipated Hunter exam day. The plaza outside the association headquarters was absolutely swarming with nervous applicants. Gripping cold steel, these rookies were dead set on snagging their official badges. Every single one of them had grinded non-stop for this exact moment, pushing their bodies to the absolute limit. But in a hilarious twist of fate, Suho, the literal beast who just solo cleared a dungeon, was running on fumes. Stepping out after crushing the written portion, he thought about the exam's true purpose. The whole setup was basically a massive anti-doping sting. Honestly though, Suho thought their methods were totally garbage. The real frauds weren't popping pills, they were sneaking in hidden stat buffs. He had spotted one girl, along with a whole squad of others radiating mana spikes way above a normal level 5 baseline. Right on cue, the system pinged, confirming his sensory stats were practically off the charts. He had completely maxed out his magic detection passive. This made sniffing out anomalies absolute child's play. Even without any formal whistleblowing, the widespread buff abuse was painfully obvious to him. It was time to shut this clown show down. Catching sight of Cholman, Suho was just glad to see one genuinely straight-edge dude in the mix. Strolling through the corridors past groups of applicants stressing over their scores, he could not shake the weird feeling that his own overpowered existence felt like a walking cheat code. Cholman jogged over, checking in on his exam results. Suho casually brushed it off, knowing he had aced it, before questioning why the older guy was even hanging around. Cholman sighed, admitting he was playing glorified security, because the association was severely understaffed. He mentioned rumors that this year's paper was brutally difficult, making Suho's chilled-out vibe seriously impressive. Our boy just shrugged off the praise and smoothly pivoted the conversation. Cholman gave him the green light, warning him not to ask for answer keys. Suho smirked, hinting it was definitely exam-adjacent. He casually dropped the bomb. Why weren't the proctors scanning for active aura enhancements during the evaluation? Cholman blinked, totally lost on the concept of buff checks. Suho broke it down. Sure, they drew blood and took urine samples to block steroids and stripped away magical artifacts, but they were completely blind to invisible skill enhancements. He tossed out a pro tip. Deploying sensory hunters would instantly weed out the fakes. Cholman's eyes lit up at the golden advice, vowing to lock that loophole down before the physical trials kicked off. Mission accomplished. Suho excused himself to prep. Right before he dipped, Cholman stopped him, dropping a genuine wish to see our main character crush the trials so they could team up in the field. He threw him some good vibes for the combat phase, which Suho graciously accepted. Fast forward 30 minutes to the arena, where a loudspeaker blared, slapping the crowd with a 2-hour delay due to supposed technical glitches with the simulation pods. The intercom ordered the restless mob to hit the food court and kill time in the holding pens. Suho was not buying that cover story for a second. It screamed damage control. He instantly knew his bro Cholman was already making moves, aggressively purging the roster of anyone radiating fake stats, acting with ruthless efficiency. Out of 1,200 hopefuls facing a brutal 10% survival rate, filtering out the trash. would totally tank those odds down to maybe 7%. Whoever survived this bloodbath was guaranteed to be absolute elite material. Suho leaned back, scanning the room to scout for any hidden gems worth watching. Out of nowhere, a heated argument shattered the quiet. Some loudmouth was aggressively trying to force a duel. The victim barked back, telling the instigator to chill out and step back. But the aggressor just smirked, playing it off as friendly practice, and mocking the dude for being terrified of exposing his trash-tier skills. Fed up, the defender shoved the bully away, demanding some personal space. The bully's grin twisted as he raised a wooden training blade, daring the guy to see what happens if he swings first. But before a brawl could break out, Suho flashed into the mix, effortlessly parrying the strike with his own wooden weapon and forcing the punk to recoil. The victim stared in shock, asking if our boy had a death wish, but Suho kept his cool, smoothly claiming the situation. He told the victim to stay out of it. The bully sneered, demanding to know if Suho was undercover security. Suho gave a deadpan response, just another candidate, but threw shade at the attacker, warning the victim that fighting this absolute clown would only tank his exam score. So stepping aside was the big brain play. The punk glared, demanding to know why this random extra was playing hero. Suho just flashed a dangerous smile, dropped his name, and boldly offered himself up as a punching bag since the guy was so thirsty for a fight. But the bully was not buying the hype. He literally scoffed, declaring he didn't waste sweat on pathetic weaklings. Hearing the word weak aimed at him completely short-circuited Suho's brain. The arrogant fool claimed Suho's parry was pure luck, telling him to crawl away before things got ugly. But oh boy, Suho was about to flip the entire script. You actually scared? Suho tilted his head, flashing a mocking grin that instantly got under the attacker's skin. He dared the guy to prove this wasn't just beginner's luck, practically begging him to step up or back down. The bait worked flawlessly. The dude completely lost his mind, spitting out insults and branding Suho a massive coward. Without breaking a sweat, Suho accepted the challenge, but insisted they keep it strictly by the book, grab an official supervisor, and hit the regulation sparring ring. The second they got the green light and stepped onto the mat, every single student in the vicinity completely dropped what they were doing to watch. The referee stepped between them, laying down the law. Strictly standard issue wooden training blades only, and he would instantly pull the plug the second things got too brutal. The bell rang, and the attacker exploded off the starting line, launching a vicious, wide swing. Suho parried it like he was swatting a fly. Desperate to land a hit, the guy vaulted into the air, aiming a skull-crushing downward strike. But Suho just casually sidestepped. Boiling with rage and absolute shock, the attacker screamed that he was going to rip Suho to shreds. Instead of fighting back, Suho simply slammed his boot down, pinning the guy's wooden blade to the floor. "You're genuinely pathetic," he sneered, totally shattering the man's ego. This aggressive hothead was Park Yong, a certified battle junkie whose entire personality revolved around hunting down heavy hitters and picking fights. His toxic obsession with raw power had morphed him into an absolute menace inside the ring. Suho instantly recognized him from his past life, remembering exactly how lethal Yong used to be, and seeing him in this rookie testing batch was a massive red flag. He knew right then and there he had to completely shut this guy down before history repeated itself. Out of nowhere, Suho launched a devastating roundhouse kick that sent Yong skidding across the floor. Looming over him, Suho ruthlessly threw the guy's earlier trash talk right back in his face. Completely shell-shocked, Yong choked out a demand to know how Suho was hitting so hard. Suho coldly dropped a reality check, warning him that rushing in blind was pure suicide, and heavily implying that the battle junkie had never tasted the terrifying power of a level 10 fighter. Up until now, Yong had probably only been bullying level 5s. Wiping his mouth with a twisted smirk, Yong noted Suho's chilling composure and declared he was completely taking off the training wheels. "Bring it on," Suho challenged. Yong erupted into a furious hurricane of strikes, but Suho practically danced through the onslaught, untouchable. Even gripping the sword with just one hand, Yong was swinging with genuine lethal intent now. Suho actually felt the heavy, crushing pressure behind those hits. Pushed to his limit, Yong finally burned his ultimate trump card, the legendary Dragon Sword technique. The entire arena exploded in a blinding flash as their wooden blades violently collided. Yong was already mentally doing a victory lap, convinced he had just cleaved Suho in half, but as the dust settled, Suho was just standing there, casually brushing off his shoulder without a single scratch. He had perfectly deflected the entire nuke. Trembling and wide-eyed, Yong demanded to know how he survived. Suho just laughed, ruthlessly calling the ultimate attack sluggish. The brutal truth? Yong had only managed to pull off a cheap, watered-down knockoff of the Dragon Sword. Without an official hunter's license to unlock his true stats, executing the real technique was literally impossible. Blinded by the utter humiliation, Yong rushed back in, swinging wildly, but Suho ghosted past every single desperate attack, Dropping into a low crouch, Suho intentionally left himself wide open, pure bait for a raging bull. The second Yong screamed his victory cry and lunged for the kill. Suho detonated a flawless uppercut straight into his jaw. Lights out. Yong crumpled to the mat, eyes rolling back, his brain scrambling to process the absolute beatdown he just took. Standing over the wreckage, Suho delivered the final emotional blow. Like I said, way too slow. Paralyzed and practically vibrating with rage, all Yong could do was stare at the ceiling, bitterly whispering Suho's name like a curse. Watching the defeated swordsman, Suho smirked, knowing Yong's toxic obsession was now completely locked onto him, which meant the other rookies were finally safe. With the human wrecking ball neutralized, Suho figured the testing facility might actually get some peace and quiet. Meanwhile, the evaluators up in the observation deck were completely frozen in shock. Snapping them out of their paralysis, Suho waved a hand, casually shouting up that he had accidentally knocked Park Yong out cold, and asked them to maybe send down an ice pack. Cutting to the next phase, Suho strolled into a massive, high-tech lab packed with dive pods. Scanning the room, he instantly spotted some serious heavyweights mingling in the crowd. He easily pegged them as undercover anti-doping narcs posing as lab geeks. As the waiting room buzzed with nervous chatter, Suho practically rolled his eyes, desperately wishing everybody would just shut up and leave. A tech waved him over to a station and told him to kick back in the chair. The guy quickly ran through the emergency abort protocol, just in case Suho's brain started melting mid-dive. Suho threw up a thumbs up, totally unbothered. The massive rig hummed to life. Suho laid back, and heavy neural cables locked onto his temples. A sleek holographic interface popped up in his vision, Hunter Practical Exam Program Online. As his consciousness ripped out of his body and plunged into the digital void, the loading bar rocketed upward. 5%, 40%, 77%. Boom. 100. Neural link established. The brutal healer class evaluation officially booted up. Suho's eyes snapped open, and reality instantly shifted into an absolute nightmare dimension. One look around, and he immediately understood why the fail rate for healers was so insanely high. The street was a literal war zone. Civilians were bleeding out, screaming for medics, and trapped underneath massive slabs of shattered concrete. Right in front of him, a girl was tearing her hands apart trying to heave a gigantic boulder off a victim. Taking in the sheer chaos, Suho silently roasted the Hunter Association for designing such an unhinged test. The simulation was absolutely brutal, turning what should have been a simple exam into pure nightmare fuel. But hold up, let us break down how this practical exam actually works before we move on. This trial is literally the main event of the entire Hunter qualification. The whole point? To see if these rookies actually have what it takes to survive playing their specific character classes. They switch up the twisted scenarios every single year, meaning the passing grades totally fluctuate. Usually, we are talking intense solo duels or surviving endless mob waves. For your average fighter, racking up kills and staying breathing equals a high score. But for the support squad, it is a whole different ballgame. The graders do not just care about how much health you can restore. Sure, magic output matters, but the absolute holy grail for a healer is their willingness to become a meat shield. Throwing yourself into the meat grinder so your teammates can live, that is the ultimate ticket to a flawless grade. Staring down a fresh horde of creeping beasts, Suho processed the twisted logic of this trial. The script literally demands that the medic bites the dust to shield the VIP. Here is the massive glitch though. His overpowered real-world stats carried over. Striding straight toward the snarling pack, his eyes locked onto a discarded blade resting in the dirt. Scanning the weapon, a ridiculous realization hit him. With his current durability, these monsters would have to chew on him for hours just to drain his health bar. While normal recruits would just take the loss, Suho instantly rejected the idea of playing the victim. He had already tasted the afterlife once, and he was not about to catch a second fade. All around him, desperate voices shattered the air as people panicked over the monstrous invasion. Yet, our guy remained completely cold, knowing every single shriek was just generated code. Strip away the virtual reality, and he was standing in a graveyard of fallen avatars. Closing the distance to a trembling NPC girl, he casually checked her status. Quivering in pure terror, the pixelated survivor begged him to flee before the beast wave crashed down again. Suho, however, kept his eyes locked on the true objective. His sole directive was keeping her breathing until the timer hit 0. Flashing a confident look, he guaranteed backup was on the way and swore no monster would touch a single hair on her head. Grip tightening on the hilt, he anchored his feet into the earth, dead set on slaughtering anything that dared to step up. Cutting back to the control center, exhausted applicants were popping out of their VR capsules like burnt toast. One dude stumbled out, totally regretting his trash performance. A female staff member hit him with the standard corporate thank you, telling him to pack up his gear and hit the exit. Pivoting to the next station, she tapped the monitor to pull up the logs. The screen flashed the profile of a bow user named Kang Jin Young. The clock maxed out at exactly 9 minutes and 4 seconds. Sighing at the tablet, she muttered about how brutal this year difficulty spike was totally tanking everyone metrics. Catching a glimpse of a specific active pod, she casually asked Director Shin about Suho current survival timer. Shin casually dropped a bombshell, 30 solid minutes. Her jaw practically hit the floor as she echoed the number, refusing to accept that insane duration. Sprinting straight to our boy terminal, she stared blankly at the glowing digits. 30 freaking minutes. Brain completely short-circuiting. She demanded to know if this guy was running a tank build. Shin calmly corrected her, stating Suho was locked in as a medic. Thinking he was trolling, she called absolute cap on that claim. Smirking, the director just tapped the glass, pointing straight at the blood-soaked blade in Suho hands. Leaning in, they both glued their eyes to the live combat feed. Witnessing this absolute menace styling on monsters, the examiner questioned reality itself, asking once more if he was actually registered as support. Mind blown by his relentless aggression, she out loud wondered if surviving would trigger an automatic fail condition. But Shin shut that down instantly. Nowhere in the manual did it mandate kicking the bucket. The ultimate win condition was simply keeping the target breathing until the buzzer. Hearing the loophole, she slowly nodded, finally grasping the genius play. Breaking it down, the director pointed out that our protagonist was literally hitting every single checkbox of the exam. Bro never strayed from the VIP, held the front line right next to her, and spammed recovery spells the entire time. He was putting his neck on the line for her safety, just doing it offensively. With every parameter satisfied, kicking him out was literally impossible. Connecting the dots, the staff member realized the valedictorian of this entire bracket was already locked in. Cut back to the digital battlefield, and Suho was currently putting on an absolute masterclass in violence. He cleaved through armored beasts with effortless single strikes. Yet, standing amidst the fading polygons, our guy was not satisfied in the slightest. His kill speed had to increase. As fresh waves of horrors spawned in, he executed them with mechanical precision, his eyes locked in a dead stare of pure concentration. After turning the entire map into a ghost town, a glowing blue alert flashed in his vision. His mastery over evasion mechanics had peaked. He had officially unlocked the max tier of the footwork skill. Scanning the text box, a massive brain blast hit him. Because this VR rigged its physics to perfectly mimic reality, the overarching system was actually tracking his neural movements. The interface recognized his manual inputs, proving that he could literally grind out real-world combat abilities while plugged into the Matrix. Sure, the experience drops were heavily nerfed compared to actual dungeon diving, but it was still basically a free, zero-risk training room. Beyond just swinging a blade, he had absorbed a ton of utility perks, pushing every single foundational slashing art straight up to A tier. The simulation did not drop any shiny loot or character levels, yet the monumental stat growth was a massive dopamine hit. He realized that if he pushed all his blade arts past the A rank threshold, he could potentially forge an ultimate custom move, just like the legendary Dragon Sword form. Suddenly, another holographic banner ripped across his sightline. Monumental milestone unlocked. His weapon proficiency had officially eclipsed every other player in the server. The artificial intelligence was literally geeking out over his completely original combat flow and demanded to permanently log it into the database. A prompt demanded to know if he wanted to fuse his core striking arts with his evasive dashes to birth a brand new ability. A wicked grin spread across Suho's face. It was time to cement his legacy. Guardian Sword. A flashing query popped up asking if he wanted to lock in that exact title. Without hesitating, our boy smashed the accept button, triggering yet another system alert. A glowing blue system window pops up, hyping him up for his insane mastery and officially registering a brand new, one-of-a-kind sword art. Boom, Guardian Sword rank S is born. This broken new ability straight up buffs every single blade attack and movement technique by a massive 50%. And the system isn't done blessing him. It drops 10 raw stat points as a reward, flashing a message, begging Suho to keep dominating the way of the sword. Then, the ultimate flex drops. He unlocks Sword Mastery S, a legendary tier, reserved strictly for absolute sword gods. Just like that, the system shatters every single level cap and restriction on learning. New blade arts, stacking yet another 50% damage multiplier on top of his already busted stats and completely wiping away any weapon penalties. Suho just stands there, flashing back to his previous timeline. Back then, grinding this out took him an agonizing 10 years. But now, armed with all his regression, cheat codes, and past life memories, he's speedrunning the entire progression system. He knows exactly how lethal he just became. Snapping his focus back to the trial, he runs the math. The mob count in this dungeon was hard-coded from the start, leaving him totally blown away by the insane budget and prep the Academy dumped into this test. Now, with every single quest marker checked off, he only has two options left: get ripped apart by the horde, or slaughter them all. Meanwhile, outside the zone, the exam proctors are literally clutching their monitors, completely speechless. Their jaws are on the floor. For the first time in the academy's entire history, a student just solo cleared the entire dungeon. They aren't just shook by his god-tier combat mechanics, but the crazy part is, he actually kept the VIP patient fully healed too. One proctor just laughs, saying they might as well toss the grading rubric out the window. First place is locked in. Flash forward a few days to the ultra-luxurious Hexagon Guild headquarters. One of their executives is smirking, totally hyped that their elite rookie, Keon, is about to take the crown. The rest of the boardroom nods along, patting themselves on the back for the insane resources they dumped into him. But then, a scout rips open the official results letter. He reads it out loud, and the room goes dead silent. Keon didn't take first place. The golden boy sitting at rank 1? On Suho. Total shockwave. The vibe instantly turns super toxic and panicked as an exec screams out, demanding to know where Keon went. Right as the guildmaster's phone starts blowing up, we cut back to our boy. Suho is chilling, taking a call from the Great Hunter Association team leader. The guy sounds exhausted, apologizing for the late props because he's been drowning in paperwork, but he makes sure to gas Suho up for clutching the flawless top score. He straight up admits he never expected a rookie to perform with such terrifying consistency. Suho plays it cool and humble, trying to pass the credit to the leader's guidance, but the veteran instantly shoots that down. He tells Suho this massive W is all his. Plus, he spills some tea. Suho's crazy performance actually outed a whole ring of tryhards, who were using illegal stims to fake their stats. Now, the association is cracking down hard on future tests, and the leader is taking that as a huge win. Then, the leader shifts his tone, getting super serious. He asks the million-dollar question. Does Suho still plan on signing with the association? Suho doesn't hesitate. Even though he's farming XP with his current guild for now, his endgame hasn't shifted one bit. The association is still his main target. The leader lets out a huge sigh of relief, promising to shoot him a text the second the official recruitment and draft schedules are locked in. Suho grins, totally down for it. Right before hanging up, the leader goes full dad mode, telling Suho to actually eat some decent food and watch his HP in real life. Suho tosses the good vibes right back. Click, the line goes dead. Back at HQ, the leader stares blankly at an item in his hand, muttering that he really needs to grab a bite himself. Meanwhile, Suho just stops walking. The leader's voice is ringing in his head. Something is super sus. He can literally feel that something bad is brewing. But suddenly, his phone buzzes again. Suho glances at the screen, instantly recognizing the caller ID. He picks up, hitting them with a smooth intro. It's Kim Soo. She's practically vibrating through the phone, hyping up his victory, and letting him know the massive bag of cash just hit his account, exactly like they agreed. Suho tips his hat to her speed, impressed by how cleanly a massive guild handles their business. Then comes the real reason she called. She drops the pitch, begging Suho to sign an exclusive contract with the Nexus Guild, swearing to give him perks that would make those other trash guilds cry. Smirking, Suho tests the waters, asking just how deep their pockets really go. Kim Soo doesn't flinch, swearing she will pull every string to give him exactly what he wants, because he's basically the undisputed valedictorian and their own sponsored prodigy. Tearing up the standard contract to write him a custom one is a total breeze. She's ready to meet up right now to ink the deal. But Suho? He plays hard to get. He casually turns her down, saying his schedule is totally packed today. He promises to check his calendar and hit her up later. But before she can panic, he drops a massive tease, hinting that since Nexus literally paid his tuition, they are basically the only guild he actually cares about. Kim Soo absolutely loses her mind. She screams so loud that the entire office turns to stare at her. She desperately pleads with him not to let any other scouts snipe him. Trying not to laugh at her total panic, Suho lets out a low chuckle and swears they'll meet up soon. The call drops, leaving him smiling as her crazy energy still rings in his ears. Right on cue, the cab driver taps the glass they made it to the drop zone. Suho tosses him a quick thanks and steps out into the city. Stepping out into the cool air, Suho let it all sink in. The test? Crushed it. The license? Secured. And that sweet payout was already chilling in his account. The prologue was officially over. Now, the real grind was staring him right in the face. Eyes locked on the prize, he hit the pavement. Before heading to Lighthouse General Market to start grinding for loot, Suho scrolled through his phone, mentally checking off his supply list. He was practically fully kitted out. All that was missing? A deadly piece of hardware. Hunting for the perfect blade, he ditched the mainstream storefronts and ducked into a shady, rundown alley shop. He knew the flashy megastores wouldn't stock the kind of hidden heat he needed. Lingering by the entrance, he prayed this dusty hole in the wall held a hidden gem. A bell chimed as he pushed through the door. The crusty shopkeeper eyed him up, barking for his order. Playing the part, Suho dropped the "I am a totally green rookie hunter" line, claiming he needed something light and agile. The old man practically scoffed, pointing a thumb toward the bargain bin in the back. Scanning the junk rack, Suho dragged a finger through an inch of grime. It was basically a graveyard of unappraised trash, F-tier gear, with 0 verified stats. But here's the crazy part. Unappraised does not automatically mean garbage. Some relics are just sleeping, waiting for a little ritual, known as liberation, to wake up their god-tier stats. These sleeper-overpowered weapons always leak a razor-thin magical signature, an invisible pulse that no average bargain hunter would ever catch. Smirking, Suho wrapped his fingers around a beat-up spear handle and flared his magic detection skill. A slow, villainous smirk crept across his face. Bingo. Walking out of the shop with his new toy slung over his shoulder, he almost felt bad. If that clueless shopkeeper ever realized he just sold a legendary artifact for pocket change, he would absolutely lose his mind. But no time to gloat. Suho gripped the shaft, shut his eyes, and started flooding the rusted metal with raw mana. Instantly, the weapon turned into a black hole. It was vacuuming up his energy at a terrifying speed. Feeling his core literally hollow out, Suho violently ripped his hands away, crashing to his knees in a cold sweat. His chest heaved. He knew instantly that if he held on for one more second, his brain would have short-circuited from total mana depletion. The unlock requirement for this beast? A magic stat of at least 100. Sure, it was basically an oversized paperweight for now, but this thing was his golden ticket. He swore right then and there to speedrun his leveling and shatter that seal. Cut to the towering PBS headquarters, where hotshot reporter Jinhui was staring at his ringing phone. The caller ID? Suho. Right off the bat, Suho dropped his resume, the absolute highest scorer of the latest hunter exams. Oh, and he casually tossed out that he was the lone wolf who solo cleared that massive, chaotic gatebreak at Sindorim Station. Jinhui literally stopped breathing. His brain was short-circuiting, trying to process this flex. This kid eradicated a catastrophic dungeon boss before he even had a laminated ID card? To the veteran journalist, Suho was not just a prodigy, he was a straight-up anomaly. Recovering his cool, Jinhui demanded to know why this freak of nature was calling him directly. Suho kept it chill. He had done a deep dive on the web and stumbled onto Jinhui's personal blog. He made it crystal clear he knew all about the reporter's crazy rich family background, but he totally respected the guy for slumming it in journalism out of pure, unadulterated passion. Then, Suho laid out his master plan. He promised he was about to break the internet and dominate the front pages. His pitch? He wanted Jinhui to be his one and only exclusive hype man. Jinhui narrowed his eyes. Was this rookie seriously trying to leash a trust fund baby to be his personal media dog? Deep down, he was ready to write Suho off as just another ego-tripping wannabe drunk on his own hype. The logic made sense on paper, but Jinhui absolutely hated the vibe. Sure, he was utterly addicted to landing exclusive scoops, but being some hunter's pocket journalist? Hard pass. Sensing the hesitation, Suho pumped the brakes, clarifying he wanted a co-op partner, not an underling. Unfazed, Jinhui fired back, accusing the rookie of using media play to artificially pump his stock price before getting scouted by a massive guild. Suho let out a quiet chuckle, admitting the reporter was half right, but missing the bigger picture. This was not a cash grab. Suho was hunting for pure, unadulterated clout. His endgame? Earning a comfy spot as a government employee? Jinhui literally dropped his jaw. Wait, did this psycho mean enlisting in the Hunter Association? Grinding for superstar fame just to land a desk job sounded absolutely unhinged. But Suho was not joking around. He wanted boots on the ground, operating directly inside the bureaucratic machine of the Hunter Association. That, Jinhui immediately side-eyed his whole backstory. Like, was Suho just another trust fund kid treating this deadly hunter gig like some weekend side quest? Turns out, the guy was a legit gate orphan. That dark trauma wasn't holding him back. It was literally the fuel driving his obsession to protect people and absolutely demolish every gate in his path. Glaring at his glowing laptop screen, Jinhui squinted, trying to read the guy's vibe. Was he capping? The hunter world was swarming with total weirdos lately, so filtering out the fakes was getting impossible. Whatever. Tossing his doubts aside, Jinhui gave a slow nod to Suho's pitch, but hit him with a hard pass anyway. As a journalist, he chased his own leads. End of story. But Suho? He wasn't taking no for an answer. He threw down a high-stakes bet. Hooked, Jinhui leaned in, waiting for the terms. Suho promised to straight up buy his trust by proving his raw hunter skills. The flex? He was going to solo raid the Tower of Challenge. Today, right now. Jinhui's jaw practically hit the floor. That specific dungeon was a notorious meat grinder. Even a fully stacked, elite squad treating it like a raid boss would wipe out. Running it completely solo sounded like a straight-up death wish, but Suho didn't even blink. He knew surviving this nightmare would instantly lock in Jinhui's respect. The price of victory? Jinhui had to become his personal, ride-or-die exclusive hype man. Gazing at him, Suho unlocked a flashback of the reporter from his past life, an absolute titan in the broadcasting game over at PBS, dripping with elite prestige and pure ego. The dude built a massive fan base, because he never bowed to corporate sponsors. Back in Suho's original timeline, they had actually crushed it together as a duo, completely riding on Jinhui's razor-sharp instincts and god-tier media control. But that exact same genius painted a massive target on his back, turning him into a massive headache for the higher-ups. Eventually, the corrupt political machine chewed him up, forced him out of the spotlight way too early, and practically erased his legacy. Not this time. Suho made a silent, unbreakable vow to rewrite that tragic ending. Gripping the phone, he laid out his final ultimatum. If he managed to speedrun the Tower of Challenge, with zero backup, Jinhui was signing his life away as his private journalist. Still reeling from the shock, Jinhui took the bait. If this crazy kid actually survived, the reporter swore on his entire career to back him up 100%. The call abruptly clicked off, right after Suho coldly announced it was showtime. Tossing his phone down, Jinhui dragged a hand down his face, totally tilted and feeling like this rookie was driving him insane. He just could not shake off that out-of-nowhere, aggressive pitch, his brain doing backflips trying to figure out the guy's actual endgame. Yet, underneath all that blazing annoyance, a tiny spark of hype flickered. Something about the kid's raw intensity felt incredibly authentic, and Suho definitely didn't give off cheap scammer energy. Trapped right in that sweet spot between major frustration and burning curiosity, Jinhui just mumbled that he was officially losing his mind. Shaking his head, he let it slide. It was basically a zero-risk gamble anyway. If the kid actually pulled off the impossible, huge win for him. If he died trying, whatever. Smash cut straight to the looming Tower of Challenge. Suho planted his feet right at the menacing entrance, flashing his shiny new hunter badge at the guard on duty. The gatekeeper immediately clocked the lack of a squad and flashed a warning look, stressing that flying solo here was basically a death trap. Glancing at the fresh ID number, the guard figured he was looking at a total noob straight out of the academy. He urgently pushed him to find a party, warning that even the absolute bottom-tier floors regularly handed out brutal beatdowns or worse. But Suho just locked eyes with him and doubled down. Recognizing that crazy determination, the guard sighed, mentioning the 70,001 entry fee, telling him to just cover the tab once the official invoice dropped. Suho shot him a quick, grateful nod. As he crossed the threshold, the guard yelled out one last desperate warning, begging him to smash the escape button if things got too spicy. Without even looking back, Suho tipped his head and plunged into the shadows. Strolling down the dark corridor, he broke down the dungeon's lore. The community viewed this place as a massive sandbox for low-rank players, stuck under level 20. It was a fully government-funded public gate, literally designed to help rookies grind XP and scale up their stats. Since his entire system got completely wiped and reset, this was the ultimate spot to trigger his comeback arc. Shoving the heavy iron doors wide open, a digital system alert instantly blared in his head, locking him in. The automated voice reminded him that he could tap out whenever, and shouting the safe word would instantly beam his body back to the lobby. Suho casually manifested his blade from thin air, just as the glowing interface kicked off the floor, one boss rush. Boom, a massive slime monster spawned in and instantly lunged for his throat. Dodging the strike, Suho quickly realized this gelatinous freak was packing way more mass and lightning-fast agility than he expected, which legitimately threw off his rhythm for a split second. Even though it was basically a trash-tier level 1 mob hitting like a wet noodle, its unpredictable, bouncy movements were crazy annoying, and getting bogged down here would totally ruin his speedrun pace. Deciding to wrap this up fast, Suho brutally plunged his blade dead center into the slime's glowing core, shattering it to dust. But suddenly, the plot twisted. This specific monster had a cloning passive. That absolutely toxic mechanic meant that a shattered core just spawned a swarm of mini-slimes. Sure, the system capped how many times they could duplicate, but getting swarmed was still a legit hazard. This insane healing factor was the exact reason normal hunters absolutely refused to run this dungeon without a full squad. Mob packs literally swarmed every single zone in this hellhole. Skipping the overthinking, Suho immediately went on a slashing frenzy to clear the multiplying trash mobs. Launching himself skyward, he perfectly skewered one in mid-air, then violently hurled his weapon to snipe a second target across the room. Free-falling back down, a slime whipped a gelatinous tentacle right at his face. Suho snagged it mid-flight, killing his downward momentum, and violently ripped on the appendage to slingshot himself back into the air. Flexing some insane combat geometry, he carved through the chaotic mess of tentacles and completely wiped the room clean of threats. A glowing prompt flashed in his vision, confirming he had absolutely dominated the first stage, and hitting him with the prompt to continue. Suho tilted his head up, eyes burning with icy determination, knowing he still had 48 brutal floors standing in his way. Stopping to rest wasn't an option. The digital bell rang again, unlocking the nightmare of floor 2. Gripping his blade, Suho let his mind drift back to the true nature of this twisted tower. Flashing back to his previous life, he recalled the absolute peak of human achievement capped out at the 48th level. Right now, the current world best was hard stuck on the 29th floor, and mind you, both of those flexes required an entire squad to pull off. Normally, pushing the tower meant squatting up, where head counts directly cranked up the aggro and mob scaling. Stacking your roster tanked your overall XP gains, but hey, it kept you from getting one shot out of existence. Most elite tryhards chasing leaderboard clout rolled out with strike teams packed with level 20 members. Smirking at the meta, Suho utterly decimates the 18th floor. Staring into the abyss above, he knows he's about to rewrite the rules. Zero hesitation. He smashes that next stage prompt, instantly warping into the 19th floor's arena. Forget the usual mob swarms. This zone drops one absolute unit of a boss monster. The dude is built like a tank, but it also meant catching a solo body was the only win condition. The second this beast spawns in, Suho blitzes forward. One lethal sword swipe, and it's game over. The system flashes his victory screen, unlocking the gateway to the 20th level, but Suho hits the brakes. Scanning the fresh kill, his eyes lock onto a glaring glitch in the matrix. Unlike regular mobs that instantly disintegrate into pixels, this corpse leaves behind a glowing red gain. The tower was practically screaming at him to investigate. Plucking the mysterious loot from the carcass, he realizes this isn't just junk, it's a literal key. Tapping into his mana radar, he tracks down a secret dimensional rift, anchored to the red gain. Jackpot. He just stumbled into the personal subspace stronghold of the notorious Fortress King, Jang Pyung-ho. This wasn't your average pocket dimension. Unlike basic inventory vaults, you could literally walk living, breathing beings straight inside. Stepping through the portal, Suho drops into a dank, underground cavern. A floating sphere of light materializes as a system prompt chimes in, declaring the original owner flat out dead. Now, it's practically begging Suho to claim the throne. He snatches the glowing orb, and instantly, it absorbs directly into his veins. The system hardlocks him as the absolute ruler of this dimensional base, meaning it isn't just a shiny piece of gear anymore. It's evolved into a permanent, soul-bound skill. The interface hits him with a wild mechanic. The entire hideout shapeshifts based on how much raw mana he pumps into it. Right on cue, reality warps. The grimy cave morphs into a slick, fully tricked-out VIP lounge. Suho's mind is blown. This spatial tech is next-level broken, expanding endlessly with his power scaling and auto-customizing to his exact vibe. A wave of pure relief hits him. He just permanently gate-kept Jang Pyung-ho from exploiting this god-tier base. In the old timeline, that scumbag hoarded everything in here. Illegal stashes, black market relics, and even literal human hostages. Flashing back to the absolute nightmares that Psycho caused makes Suho's blood boil. But plot twist, the keys are his now. That dark future just got cancelled. By wiping the Fortress King's legacy before it even began, and scoring an overpowered secret sanctuary in the process, Suho just secured the ultimate W. Fired up and locked in, he squares his shoulders for the next grind. Cut to Jinhui, furiously doom-scrolling his feed and hyper-fixating on a trending thread. It looked like the entire student body was currently obsessing over the Nexus Guild. Suho had previously dropped hints about wanting to sign with the Great Hunter Association, but these leaked puff pieces screamed that Nexus already thought they had him in the bag. Jinhui was sweating it. Who was actually pulling the strings? Still, his brain couldn't stop glitching over Suho's insane floor-clearing speed. Out of nowhere, a massive server-wide notification blasts across everyone's screens. Floor 30? Obliterated. The unbeatable tower record had just been turned to dust, and this absolute madman was already stepping onto the 31st floor. The entire street went dead silent, jaws on the floor. Panicked, whispers erupted. Was it a glitch? A massive raid squad? Or was some solo god actually breaking the game? The hysteria spiked into absolute chaos. When the system instantly rang out again, the 31st floor was wiped clean before people could even process the last alert. Jinhui physically froze. If this absolute monster was actually Suho, he had wildly underestimated the guy. Up until now, Jinhui was coping, calling Suho a lucky fraud. But if this god-tier speedrun was legit, Suho was about to be his absolute worst nightmare for a very long time. Over at the Hunter Association HQ, Director Kim caught wind of the absolute madness and practically choked. She frantically verified the live data. It was real. Suho was currently speedrunning history on live servers. Realizing they were staring at a literal goldmine, she knew they had to drop a blank check that he absolutely couldn't walk away from. She barked orders at her crew to instantly ping the big bosses and sprinted toward the main executive office. At the same time, Chulmin was staring at the system logs, his brain melting as he realized this tower rush was a completely unprecedented global event. If Suho was genuinely eyeing the association, they were looking at a once-in-a-century draft pick. Right on cue, Chulmin's phone started buzzing. It was the association's vice president. Heart pounding, Chulmin swiped to answer. The VP immediately demanded his exact coordinates. Hearing that Chulmin was basically camping outside the Pangyo Tower, the VP snapped into action. His order was simple: secure Suho at all costs. Chulmin's eyes lit up, hyping himself up to play the hero recruiter, but the VP instantly humbled him and shot that delusion out of the sky. Bro didn't even care about drafting him, just wanted that clout-chasing photo op with the president. Click. Chulmin was left standing there, absolutely ghosted and fuming. This right here? This is exactly why everyday people looked at the higher-ups and saw nothing but power-tripping, brain-dead suits. Chulmin firmly believed only real hunters belonged in the driver's seat. He locked his eyes onto the massive spire, racking his brain for a pitch that would actually pull Suho onto their roster. Meanwhile, deep inside the dungeon, our boy had just wiped the floor with level 48, casually shattering the leaderboards yet again. But the grind was getting real. Non-stop dungeon diving was absolutely frying his stamina. He seriously started questioning when this hellish marathon would wrap up. Then the holographic blue screen popped up, and his whole vibe shifted. Seeing that sweet level 39 badge was the ultimate dopamine hit. Crushing a zone meant 5 shiny new points to play with, and he wasn't about to waste a single one. Since he practically breathed the system's mechanics, min-maxing his stats felt exactly like leveling up a high-tier RPG avatar, practically a digital twin. And no cap, the progression was insanely addicting. Points allocated, game face on. Suho braced himself for the endgame. Stage 49 was officially live. A blinding shard of light materialized, vomiting out the ultimate raid boss, a level 49 tower dragon. Suho just glared at the absolute unit, instantly realizing the devs definitely unbalanced this spawn. It didn't even need a pureblood pedigree, simply having that reptilian DNA made it a walking cheat code. Honestly, it felt like a trap room designed to guarantee a player's death. But Suho had a mission, and second-guessing wasn't in his vocabulary. Jaw clenched tight, blade gripped low, he blitzed straight toward the gargantuan beast, absolutely locked in for the kill. He closed the gap for a lethal strike, but the monster fired back with a brutal counter, launching Suho skyward just to dodge the blow. Hanging in the air, a terrifying realization hit him. For a creature built like a skyscraper, this thing moved with glitch-like speed. Out of nowhere, pitch-black energy exploded from its talons, acting like a literal black hole, yanking him directly into its throat. Mere inches from becoming dragon food, he latched onto its upper lip, vaulted flawlessly over its massive skull, and brought his steel down with skull-crushing momentum. The beast unleashed a deafening shriek, thrashing its neck with such psychotic force that Suho was swatted away like a fly, forcing him to tactical roll back to a safe distance. Chest heaving, a chilling thought crossed his mind. His ultimate heavy attack didn't even chip a scale. He practically just gave it a mildly annoying paper cut. Retaliating, the Titan stomped the arena with apocalyptic weight, ripping massive fissures straight through the stone. Suho scrambled behind a boulder, thanking the universe he'd dumped so many points into his defense. If he hadn't, that mere tremor would have instantly one-shot him. The math clicked in his head. Sure, its base level wasn't god tier, but its racial passives gave it impenetrable armor. Basic slashing was a total bust. He had to snipe the critical weak spot, the fabled reverse scale. Considering this overgrown lizard hadn't hit the level 100 cap, it definitely couldn't conceal that fatal flaw yet. His eyes darted across the armored hide until they locked onto a slightly shifted plate right near the base of its tail. Target acquired. Zero hesitation. He sprinted in and hammered that diamond-hard blind spot with absolutely everything he had. The monster screeched in pure agony, triggering a bright red alert window. Hitting the crit spot had officially thrown the boss into its enraged phase. He abandoned his weapon buried deep within the flesh, entirely aware this wasn't going to be a quick speedrun anymore. Playing the long game here was pure suicide. Flooding his arms with mana, he shoved the hilt even further in. Completely unhinged now, the beast popped its terrifying area of effect debuff. Suho's muscles instantly locked up as his brain plunged into a nightmare-inducing trip. The interface flashed status effect. Fear. He desperately tried to cast a cleanse, but the prompt bluntly rejected it, stating the crowd control level was way too high. Right as a massive spiked tail whipped around to splatter him, Suho ripped open a portal to his personal dimension and dipped. Safe inside, he practically shotgunned a cleansing elixir. A chime rang out as the liquid washed the terrifying visuals completely from his mind. Breathing a massive sigh of relief, he grounded himself with the fact that his pocket dimension was heavily VIP only. He had literally just picked that flask up from a random vendor, never guessing it would save his life this early on. This raid was sweating him way harder than anticipated. Clearing the debuff once didn't grant him magical immunity, and standard healing magic was a total joke against this tier. Basically, ducking into his hideout to chug potions on repeat was his only play, and that was a fast track to running out of supplies. He needed a galaxy brain strat, fast. Scrolling through his digital stash, he hovered over the summon button for the crazy pulverization scholar. But before he could lock it in, a pop-up revealed he had successfully absorbed a beginner crafting recipe from an old manual, spawning a mystical alchemy pot right in front of him. Instantly catching the drift, he tossed 3 wildly random drops inside. The bizarre loot consisted of the anonymous rogue's footwear, that sketchy bard's loot, and the mystery janitor's sweeper. The cauldron sparked to life, kicking off the merge. Suho grinned, knowing hard-coded recipes literally had a 0% fail rate. Turns out, all that supposed garbage loot was secretly meta. The blinding light faded, leaving behind an insanely rare, freshly minted artifact. Boom! First Mumu was born a ring forged straight out of a basic tier formula. And just for pulling off a world-first craft, the system hooked Suho up with 10 bonus stat points. He already knew the drill. First edition drops always hit S tier or higher, but this beauty? Straight up S+. Since it was a scaling growth item, he slipped that ring on without a second thought, and the system instantly soulbound it to his character. It hit him then back in his past life. He totally fumbled the bag on securing first Mumu. That clout-chasing mad pulverization scholar had found it first and leaked the recipe to everyone. But in this timeline, Suho snatched that massive W entirely for himself. Flexing those extra stats, he pulled up his interface and dumped 4 points straight into magic, bringing it to an even 100 as the system spammed him with congratulations. His magic stat lit up in glowing red, a crazy milestone he'd never even touched before, hitting level 50, making his old doubts about reaching the purple tier look like a joke. Now, that goal felt entirely within reach. Sure, unlocking purple demanded a massive 700 points, making it a serious grind. But he was dead set on making it happen. With his build locked in, Suho materialized his trusty, beat-up spear. He started flooding the weapon with raw mana, watching in awe as it chugged down the magical energy like a black hole. The second it hit maximum capacity, the system flashed a successful awakening alert, and the weapon morphed entirely into the legendary Shadow Spear. Time for round 2. The lore dropped hard on this one. The system revealed it was actually a lost relic belonging to the Shadow Lord. Crafted directly from the spine of a shadow beast, this god-tier weapon chose Suho as its first master, allowing him to literally pull it straight out of his own shadow. It fueled its own regeneration by siphoning magic and shadow energy. Suho instantly recognized how completely busted this was, mirroring the insane utility of Zhongpyeong's subspace fortress. We're talking about a weapon swung by the Shadow Lord himself, an absolute monarch-level powerhouse. If a boss like that was lurking inside the gate, Suho was now packing its signature heat, exhaling a massive sigh of relief that he swiped it before a villain could. Time for a field test. He ripped the spear from the darkness again, totally vibing with how insanely smooth the summon felt. Since dealing damage from the safety of his subspace fortress was a no-go, he had to pop out and snipe the sleeping dragon's reverse scale. Stepping into the open, Suho made his move. He scaled a jagged cliff staring right down at the massive beast, hoisted the shadow spear, and yeeted it dead center into the stone fused to the monster's tail. The dark blade punched clean through the armor, sending the colossal dragon thrashing in absolute agony. Suho leaped off the ledge just as the system screamed that the boss was entering an enraged phase, blasting the entire arena with dragon fear. But our guy instantly glitched back into his subspace, totally dodging the nasty debuff and keeping his toxic hit-and-run cheese strat alive. Strike, dip, repeat. He kept aggressively poking the beast and dipping out, turning the fight into a wildly drawn-out grind. Eventually, that reverse scale's durability tanked below 10%. While it wasn't shattered yet, its defense was practically non-existent. The sneaky strats were officially dead. Throwing stealth out the window, Suho shifted gears into a hyper-aggressive, full-frontal assault. Exploding out of his pocket dimension, he launched himself skyward and slammed the shadow spear ruthlessly into the dragon's eyeball, dropping a shockwave that cracked the ground. The blowback sent Suho flying, but the infuriated beast frantically ripped apart the zone hunting for him, giving Suho the perfect opening to flank around and sprint for its tail. The boss tried to pop Dragon Fear a second time, but Suho was faster, brutally crushing the tailstone before the roar could drop. The interface lit up with confirmation. The reverse scale was completely obliterated, rapidly bleeding out the beast's power, while Suho quickly downed a purification potion. Rocketing into the air for the final execution, he delivered one buttery smooth slash straight across its throat, sending the massive dragon crashing down into the dirt. The boss fight was officially over. The system flashed an epic victory banner. Suho had officially conquered the 49th floor. He didn't just win, he shattered the Tower of Challenge record, instantly bagging 10 bonus stat points, while a mountain of insane loot started flooding his screen. Sprawled out on the broken terrain, he just let the insane reality sink in. He had actually full cleared the entire tower. That was a monumental flex neither his past nor present self had ever pulled off. And hitting level 40 unlocked a broken new skill, Healing Spirit. It was a massive area of effect heal that, at max level, could keep an entire battlefield alive, but the system's evaluation was just getting started. Acknowledging his absolute god-tier run, the system blessed him with dragon blood, completely blowing Suho's mind since that was the iconic power of the monster player, Yoma. Suddenly, the pieces clicked into place. This was the exact spot in the Dragon Mountains where Yoma had farmed his broken abilities. The prompt broke it down. Absorbing that draconic blood meant gaining a dragon's sheer physical dominance, scaling directly with how hard the player grinded. Before he could even call back his weapon, an alert popped up warning him that the spear was aggressively reacting to the dead boss's massive shadow. It literally swallowed the dragon's shadow whole, triggering a wild secondary evolution into the heavily buffed Shadow Spear Plus. A secret passive called Shadow Devour, something completely hidden from the base stats, leveled up, awakening a terrifying fragment of the weapon's own consciousness. Peeking at the refreshed stat sheet left him absolutely speechless. Both Shadow Binding and Shadow Regeneration had skyrocketed from A rank straight to S tier. The new Shadow Binding was insanely toxic, allowing him to literally tear a target's shadow away and instantly root them in place. Adding to the madness, Shadow Fangs would shred that shadow to pieces for infinite bleed stacks, proving that growth-type weapons were just built different compared to basic gear. Totally hyped with his haul, Suho turned to leave the zone, until something massive sticking out of the rubble locked his focus. A colossal fang. The system scanned the loot. A colossal dragon's fang. Its passive? An absolutely broken anti-heal debuff that permanently shut down any regeneration. Suho just stood there, completely mind-blown. He actually bagged genuine dragon loot, a drop rate so abysmal that most hunters thought it was an absolute myth. This proved that the monstrosity guarding the tower wasn't some cheap knockoff. It was a pureblood worm shedding raw, top-tier materials. The whole raid just turned into an absolute goldmine. Scooping up his epic haul, our guy finally pivoted toward the exit. He knew for a fact that Jinhui, the ever-persistent journalist, was definitely camping right outside the gate. Suddenly, the massive core crystal exploded into sparkling dust. Right on cue, the system's cold voice echoed out, officially declaring the impossible trial tower completely cleared. The MVP? Player Suho. And with the boss down, every other hunter stuck inside got instantly booted back to reality. A massive rift tore open, spitting out waves of disoriented players. They tumbled across the dirt, blinking in absolute shock. One dude just dropped straight to the pavement, gripping his hair like his brain was glitching. He kept mumbling that they had to be dreaming. Did some absolute madman actually solo the unkillable tower? His buddy, still eating dirt, desperately demanded to know who this Suho guy even was. The first guy just shakily aimed a finger straight ahead, pointing right at our protagonist. His partner slowly turned, gulping hard before whispering that, yeah, that was the raid boss killer himself. But the scene outside was absolute chaos. A suffocating tsunami of journalists had completely swarmed the protagonist, leaving zero room to even breathe. Paparazzi flashes turned the area into a strobe light. A chorus of desperate reporters screamed over each other, begging for an exclusive quote about his god-tier clear. Internally, Suho was practically running on fumes. That oversized lizard had chewed through his health bar way worse than he anticipated, and right now, he just desperately craved his bed. Dealing with a screeching press circus was literally the last thing on his to-do list. He genuinely didn't expect the media to go this feral. Scanning the perimeter, his eyes locked onto Jinhui. The journalist was slumped against the hood of his sedan, staring off into space like his soul just left his body. The guy was probably mentally labeling Suho as an absolute freak of nature, because let's be real, walking into that death trap alone and actually surviving, completely unhinged. Gliding over silently, Suho tapped the reporter right on the shoulder with a chill greeting. Jinhui instantly shrieked like a banshee and collapsed onto the pavement in pure terror, and then his jaw hit the floor the second he recognized the face staring back at him. Stumbling over his words, he desperately asked how Suho managed to ghost an entire mob of cameras. Flashing a subtle smirk, our boy casually brushed it off. He played it cool, making it sound like he just popped some high-level invisibility skill and vanished without leaving a single footprint. Offering a hand to help the shaking guy up, Suho tilted his head, asking why the reporter still looked at him with so much doubt. Grabbing his hand hesitantly, Jinhui stared up like he was looking at an alien. He bluntly pointed out that Suho sounded completely delusional. Without missing a beat, our protagonist shot back. If Jinhui was seriously getting cold feet, all he had to do was say the word, and Suho would happily find someone else to tag along. The journalist quickly scrambled up, slapping the dirt off his clothes. He fired back, pointing out he wouldn't have risked his neck this much if he actually thought the guy was a scam. Then, panic kicked in. He shoved Suho toward the passenger door, yelling at him to get in before the paparazzi spotted them. Once they were safely peeling away, Suho's phone suddenly buzzed. It was team leader Chulman calling to drop massive props for somehow obliterating the impossible dungeon, and the exec confessed he fully intended to shake his hand in person, but our MC had literally vanished into thin air. Suho kept his manners sharp, expressing his gratitude, and played the exhaustion card, admitting he ducked out just to avoid the headache. Chulman just chuckled, noting that Suho had a massive talent for shattering the status quo. The team leader probed to see if the kid was still hanging around Pangyo for a quick meetup, but Suho smoothly deflected, claiming his ride had already scooped him up, then cut to the chase, asking if there was a specific agenda on the table. Chulman played it off casually, insisting he just wanted to chat, but then dropped the bait, asking if the hero could swing by the Hunter Association headquarters. Our guy literally froze, echoing the word back with a heavy dose of suspicion. Chulman didn't deny it. He laid it out flat. Soloing a trial tower wasn't just rare, it was a literal glitch in reality. The entire world treated that specific gate like a permanent, unbeatable fixture. Since some madman actually beat it, the brass demanded a full-scale debriefing. But Suho wasn't buying it. He sharply pointed out that top-tier corporate guilds never got dragged into interrogation rooms for clearing high-rank dungeons. If the suits just wanted data, why couldn't they just send a simple email request? The line went dead silent for a tense heartbeat. Finally, Chulman backed off, wishing the tired hunter a solid recovery. Suho killed the call, sinking deeply into the leather car seat as his brain shifted into overdrive. He saw right through the corporate BS. The top brass definitely wanted to parade him around like a shiny new trophy for massive PR points. Sure, Chulman was a solid dude, but Suho couldn't care less about boosting the egos of some crusty executives. Slipping into their political circus right now? Absolute nightmare fuel. He mentally committed to ghosting the higher-ups completely until his official hunter license was locked in. Checking the rearview mirror, Jinhui nervously asked if he could pitch a question. Our MC just gave a lazy nod, greenlighting the interrogation. The reporter pointed out the obvious. With god-tier stats, the kid could literally write his own ticket. Why not secure a cushy government gig? Suho just smirked. Sure, federal money hit different, and despite private guilds flexing their wealth all over social media, the feds held the actual monopoly on violence. Jinhui blinked, totally thrown off, arguing that corporate hunters practically owned the culture with their insane clout. But Suho's voice went ice cold. Clout? That was just a fake filter, a fleeting trend. Right now, the masses treated these guildmasters like superhero icons. But fast forward a few years, society wouldn't idolize them anymore. They'd be terrified of them. Processing the heavy truth, Jinhui gave a slow, deep nod. Exhaling a heavy sigh, our protagonist laid down his ultimate endgame. If he actually wanted to shut down the monster apocalypse for good, he couldn't play lone wolf forever. He needed serious infrastructural backing, and that was exactly why he was playing ball with the association. Hearing the master plan, a sly grin spread across the reporter's face. Jinhui hyped him up, saying that his mindset was a straight-up cheat code. No other player out there possessed that kind of relentless drive and unbreakable conviction. Suho tossed out a quick thanks, a faint green glow wrapping around his arm as he casually patched himself up. Watching this, Jinhui popped the question. Was he actually going to bother with standard general recruitment? He flat out stated that a monster like Suho settling for a Tier 9 grunt position would be an absolute tragedy. Suho shot that down instantly. Jinhui threw out Tier 7 as a guess, but Suho looked him dead in the eye. Tier 5, he corrected. Jinhui practically lost his mind, yelling to ask if he was tripping. Suho just sighed and told him to quit questioning his sanity every 2 seconds. Leaning in with burning curiosity, Jinhui defended himself, saying anyone would want the tea on a flex like that. A faint smirk crossed Suho's face as he finally agreed to spill the details. There were conditions, though keep it entirely off the record, and maybe keep his eyes on the actual road. As the miles rolled by, Suho laid out his master plan. The reporter was left totally speechless, blown away by the sheer genius of it. Our boy just gave a chill nod, agreeing that, yeah, it was a massive brain play, but he hammered home that this could not leak yet. When the time was right, he wanted Jinhui to be the one to drop the official nuke on the internet. Once that info dropped, it was going to completely break the system. And Jinhui? He would be sitting on the ultimate exclusive scoop, leaving every rival news outlet eating his dust. Jinhui gave him a hard look, asking if our protagonist was just planning to milk him for every ounce of value he had. Unbothered, Suho hit him with raw logic. If you are buddies with a high-profile journalist, you absolutely exploit that connection for massive gains. Barking out a laugh, Jinhui surrendered, telling the guy to use him however he saw fit. Then, reality hit, and he asked if going back to his own apartment was really the move right now. Thanks to his completely doxed status, there was a high % chance that a massive mob of stalkers and reporters had already swarmed his front door. A cocky grin flashed across Suho's face. He shrugged, saying he would just pull a disappearing act, exactly like his flawless escape from the tower. But Jinhui pumped the brakes, suggesting a better alternative. Why not just crash at his place? He had a massive crib and practically lived like a ghost anyway. The guest suite was fully decked out, and the building's security was basically military grade. Not a single soul was getting through those doors. Suho paused, narrowing his eyes as he asked for the actual address. Puffing out his chest, Jinhui flexed that he stayed over at Kaiser Cheongdam. Suho's mind practically blue-screened. Those were hyper-elite penthouse suites casually worth hundreds of billions of won. Pulling up to the spot, Suho stepped through the front door and instantly froze in his tracks. And no, it was not because he was dazzled by the aesthetics. It was because this pad radiated massive final boss energy. This was that quiet, aggressive kind of wealth. The type of opulence that did not need to scream for attention. It simply existed and demanded your total respect. Treating this insane mansion like a cheap motel, Jinhui casually told him to make himself entirely at home. Suho gave a slow nod, making a mental note that this was exactly what reality looked like when you spawned in with the Premium Wealth DLC fully unlocked. Jinhui gestured toward a sleek, futuristic tablet resting perfectly on the coffee table, the ultimate smart home command center. Loaded up with a VIP resident app, Suho could literally swipe to order gourmet takeout, cop new clothes, summon concierge services, or even call in a rapid response healer if things went south. Looking him over, Jinhui pointed out that Suho's complexion was looking infinitely better than when he first jumped in the ride. Deadpan, Suho reminded him that he was, in fact, a healer. Jinhui blinked, totally glitching out, and asked him to repeat that. Suho said it again, letting a spike of irritation bleed into his voice because yes, he was literally a support class. Hand flying to the back of his neck, the journalist sheepishly apologized. He confessed that despite reading the viral stats online, his brain physically could not process the information. Because, let us be real, healers are supposed to hide behind massive guilds and farm-safe expod. They absolutely do not casually solo speedrun the Tower of Challenges like an absolute demon. Grabbing his designer bag, the rich heir announced he had to bounce back to the corporate grind, tossing Suho the door code on his way out. Waving him off, Suho told him to drive safe and not stress about a thing. The second that heavy oak door clicked shut, a glowing blue system window flared to life in front of Suho's eyes. It was finally time to cash in and dump all those juicy stat points he hoarded from dominating the tower. He played it smart, balancing out his stamina to match his offensive stats, before dumping every single leftover point straight into his perception attribute. Hitting this threshold meant he was no longer just grinding on an elite track, he was officially walking the path of an heir. Glancing over the numbers, even he had to admit his build was looking completely broken. With his level up sorted, our boy instantly switched into tactical mode. Back in his past life, he was an absolute god at sniffing out hidden surveillance tech. Factor in his newly maxed out perception, and nothing was slipping past his radar. Look, he trusted the reporter and all, but he definitely was not naive enough to believe a mega-rich conglomerate heir's penthouse was bug-free. Staying paranoid kept you breathing. After running a brutal, inch-by-inch sweep of the perimeter, Suho collapsed onto the plush leather sofa, his energy tank completely on empty. The square footage on this crib was absolutely astronomical, dwarfing even high-tier subspace properties. Honestly, sweeping this massive map for cameras felt way more exhausting than boxing that dragon earlier. Clearing the house is totally secure. He let his muscles finally untense. But the peace lasted exactly 2 seconds before his smartphone started vibrating like a jackhammer. A relentless tidal wave of notifications lit up the screen. One glance was all it took for Suho to realize his personal data had been fully leaked to the public. Some troll had blasted his digits across the web, and the spam texts were rolling in at light speed. Swallowing the hard pill, he knew right then that he desperately needed a burner phone and a fresh identity. Remembering that slick VIP tablet Jinhui pointed out, Suho booted up the community network. To his total shock, the interface was wildly overpowered and ultra-efficient. He quickly migrated all his critical data over to the secure resident device, locking it down for strict personal use. While his compromised phone continued to vibrate off the table, he drafted up a solid plan to swap his carrier digits as soon as possible. He flicked his wrist. Just past 5 p.m., enough time to catch a quick breather before heading back into the grind. But while he was chilling, across town in some dead-silent building, the air suddenly distorted. A shadowy portal ripped open, spitting out a squad of masked figures. They did a quick sweep. 0 cameras, 0 witnesses. Coast completely clear. Without a word, they unzipped their heavy duffels and started rigging explosives like absolute pros. But right in the middle of planting the payload, Suho just materialized behind them. Dude was so laid back you'd think he was crashing a study group, not interrupting a literal terror plot. Blowing up public property? Yeah, not the best look, he dropped casually. The whole squad froze in their tracks. They panicked. This spot was supposed to be a ghost town today. Suho just shrugged. Normally, yeah, but I kind of figured you guys would pull a stunt like this. Total chaos broke out. Fall back, one guy screamed, making a mad dash for the portal. But one of the girls in the crew tripped hard, slamming into the concrete. Her squad paused. You good? A teammate tried yanking her up, but she was literally glued to the floor. Grab her and let's go, another shouted, but her legs were completely anchored down. What they hadn't realized yet was that Suho had already dropped his shadow bind, wrapping her in pitch-black chains, fighting against the grip. The guy yelled that something was seriously messed up. The girl just looked up and dropped one cold order. Ditch me. He shook his head, refusing to leave a man behind. But she wasn't having it. Take him out, she barked. Fueled by pure adrenaline, the remaining 3 lunged at Suho all at once, but they didn't even land a single footstep. An invisible, crushing weight slammed them face first into the dirt. Suho's intimidation skill had them totally paralyzed. Looking down at the bodies, Suho casually asked if they were rolling with Banshee. Now, for context, Banshee wasn't just some street gang. They were an infamous terror cell, infamous for sparking massive explosions and pure chaos. Sure, they got busted back in the day, but the sheer destruction they left behind was insane. And the craziest part? Only 4 people pulled it all off. Hearing their crew's name, the squad was completely shook. How do you know that name? One spat. Suho just strolled over, swiping the cap off the closest guy's head. Kwak Duho, Suho called out. The muscle. Working day labor gigs to cover up your heavy lifting. He casually shifted his finger to the next guy. Q1, the explosive expert moonlighting as a middle school science teacher. He didn't even miss a beat before tagging the third. Kim Hyun-min, the getaway guy. A regular delivery driver who spams movement skills to ghost crime scenes. Finally, Suho locked eyes with the girl on the floor, Koo Yoon-hwa, a random college student, and the actual mastermind behind Banshee. Her ridiculously OP EMP skill could literally wipe out electronics and magic barriers like it was nothing. Yoon-hwa's jaw practically hit the floor. Who the hell are you? She demanded. Suho just smirked. Dig deep enough, and all secrets come to light. You of all people should know that. She wasn't buying the mysterious act, demanding his real identity again. Suho gave her props for being sharp, but reminded her she already had the pieces put together. Look, if you think I'm capping, he stated loud and clear, I could just drop you off at the cops right now. Seeing zero hesitation in his eyes, she finally caved. What do you want? Should have started with that, Suho replied. He glanced around. Vibes are way off in here. Pack up your little toy. We're taking this convo to your base. She just glared at him, her mind racing, trying to figure out exactly how deep this guy's intel went. Reluctantly, she nodded. Suho pivoted to Hyun-min. You good to walk? Pop the portal, because I'm definitely not calling an Uber for this. The second they stepped into the gang's safe house, Suho told everyone to chill out and drop the masks if they wanted. Yoon-hwa stubbornly crossed her arms, but seconds later, she ripped the fabric off her face, snapping that she was only doing it because it was way too hot, not because he was bossing her around. Then she went right back to grilling him. How did he dox their whole crew? Why flex on them like this? And why would a high-tier gate clearer waste time hunting a rogue terror squad? Suho just let out a laugh, admitting she was rapid-firing so many questions he barely knew which one to hit first. He confessed to using his own hidden arsenal skills the public had zero clue about to hunt them down, playing the exact same stealth game they were. Dropping the attitude, she looked him dead in the eye. Bottom line, what's the goal? Suho laid it out. He wanted them on his payroll. He brought up his recent PBS interview and the master plan he leaked on air. Yoon-hwa rolled her eyes, guessing he was trying to drag them into the Hunter Association. Suho nodded, but before she could start tweaking out, he shut down the idea that this was some forced draft into government servitude. His roadmap was simple: crush the level 5 exam, speedrun a couple of promotions, and land a spot right inside the Special Forces Division. Yoon-hwa looked utterly disgusted. Suho waved her off, telling her to kill the sour expression. He fully knew they despised the Special Forces, which was exactly why every bomb they planted hit a government-linked site. He completely understood their rage. Why? Because he shared it. Suho dropped the bomb. He was a gate orphan. Growing up, he thought it was just a tragic roll of the dice. But the truth? That entire catastrophe was totally rigged from the start. Whenever a gate got wiped, the ground beneath it instantly skyrocketed into top-tier real estate. The suits in charge fully knew a gate break was imminent, and they sat back and let innocent people die just to cash in. Massive corporate projects were pulling the strings, and Suho already had the names of the VIPs who signed their death warrants. Suho's endgame was crystal clear: hijack the top seat of the special forces and make the scumbags who wronged him pay the ultimate price. He laid it out for them. This unit wasn't just a club. They held absolute power over the association, pulled strings across government sectors, and had the legal juice to lock up rogue hunters. He was serving up ice-cold revenge on a silver platter. No messy terrorism, just a calculated, totally legal dismantling of their enemies. Manhwa wasn't fully sold, clapping back that he still had to survive the brutal level 5 exam. Suho just flashed a dangerous smirk and told her to grab some popcorn, dropping a final, chilling ultimatum that one more ambush would end with him gift-wrapping them for the feds. He shut the negotiation down. Deep down, he knew he left their jaws practically glued to the floor. Flashing back to his previous life, Banshee was a complete phantom in the interrogation room. But now, Suho saw them for what they really were: broken souls pushed into their villain era by pure trauma, just like him. If they just had a mentor back then, maybe their timeline wouldn't have crashed and burned. So in this life, before they went full dark side, he was going to hijack their destiny and steer them right, even if it took an eternity. He knew Manhwa was going to bite. The deal was way too juicy, and honestly, his god-tier skills spoke for themselves. Leaving them with a heavy silence, he advised the crew to use their brains and choose wisely. Cut to the South Korean Hunter Association, where the vibe was absolutely toxic. The vice president was aggressively flaming team leader Jung Chul-min for fumbling what should have been a cakewalk. The boss screamed that the president literally wiped his entire calendar clean just to get FaceTime with An Suho. Sparing him from the chopping block this once, the VP promised hellfire and brimstone if Jung dropped the ball a second time. Swallowing his pride, Chul-min just ducked his head, took the verbal beating, and scrambled out the door. The second the lock clicked shut, he let out a soul-crushing sigh. His brain was totally fried from enduring that marathon of boomer complaints. For a split second, the urge to rage quit his government job and sell out to a cushy civilian guild was incredibly real. But then reality hit. He flashed back to his core reasons for bleeding for the association in the first place. He had survived actual death matches. Chewing on some corporate misery was light work. Muttering a quick pep talk under his breath, he locked in. Out of nowhere, P. Seong-yul, the absolute menace running the Special Investigation Squad, materialized and clamped a heavy hand on his shoulder. Already operating on zero patience, Chul-min mentally screamed at the universe for sending this specific guy his way. Slapping on a fake customer service voice, he politely asked what brought the chief to his floor. Pai just flashed his signature, toxic, cheerful grin. He joked that rumors of his favorite team leader getting roasted were echoing through the halls, mockingly praising Jung for tanking the old man's endless yapping. Playing it painfully safe, Jung instantly threw himself under the bus, claiming the failure was entirely on him. Pacing down the corridor, Pai smoothly pivoted the chat, bringing up the massive tea spilling about Suho going rogue. Chul-min quickly pumped the brakes. Suho wasn't exactly a menace to society, though he admitted the gossip was moving at the speed of light. Noting that the leak was still contained to the inner circle, Pai randomly offered a lifeline. But when Jung asked for details, Pai dropped an absolutely unhinged strategy. His big brain idea? Slap Suho with a fake charge, drag him into an interrogation room in handcuffs, and sort out the misunderstanding after. In P.I.'s twisted logic, it was all about faking the optics of total control. Dragging the kid in would instantly pacify the president. The crisis would look managed, and Suho would walk free while the association maintained its alpha status. He justified the madness by pointing out that since the rookie wanted a badge anyway, it was basically a massive win for everyone. Jung just stared at him, blank-faced, before carefully labeling the chief's master plan as a bit too chaotic. Messing with a superstar talent like Suho was a guaranteed recipe for career suicide. Yet, Pai did not bat a single eye. Instead, he patronized Jung's golden retriever morality, genuinely baffled why a high-ranking official was sweating bullets over one singular hunter. Jung tried to politely disengage, but Pai went in for the kill. He coldly reminded him that the law still owned the hunters. He dropped a heavy hint that the Awakened used to be terrified of the suits, pushing Jung to toss the rulebook and start moving like a real shadow boss. The air practically crackled with tension before Jung offered a stiff nod, promising to chew on the idea. Flashing one last fake smile, Pai strutted off, leaving behind a chilling reminder that playing by the book was for losers. Finally isolated, Jung mentally played back the entire toxic exchange. It blew his mind that he used to actually look up to Pai. Back in the day, Pai felt like the only real one in a sea of out-of-touch corporate elites. Now, he seemed like a borderline psychopath. Power trips change a man, and Pai's vault of dirty secrets made him a walking nuke. Shaken to his core, Jung escaped the building to find an isolated corner, Slumping onto a bench, his brain went straight into overdrive. His thoughts immediately drifted back to the anomaly himself, Suho. The kid had been all in on the association, only to ghost them out of nowhere. Honestly, it made sense top-tier guilds were throwing around insane bags of cash that could easily buy anyone's loyalty. But Young couldn't shake the feeling that the rookie was playing a completely different game. Smash cut to Suho, boots hitting the pavement as he hopped out of a cab across town. Sparking up the legendary first Mumu ring on his finger, he let out a sharp breath, fully realizing just how unhinged his recent moves really were. The first time he fired off this skill, it was totally clunky. But post-Tower of Challenge, the guy was basically a walking masterclass. Time to get moving. He strolled right up to the Seoul Central Blood Center, flipping his magic detection on like a switch. His eyes swept the zone until he caught it a whisper of raw mana. Even top-tier stealth gates could not stop their own energy from bleeding out. Tracking that glitchy frequency, Suho uncovered a portal disguised as heavy fog. But this bad boy was locked behind some hyper-specific requirements. Zero hesitation. He whipped out a blade, slashed right across his palm, and let the crimson drops free fall into the mist. He already knew the entry fee was literal lifeblood. The portal drank it up until the system flashed green, clearing his access. Boom, hidden dungeon unlocked, handing Suho a sweet 5 bonus stat points. Welcome to the Blood Decree. Stepping inside, he chucked a handful of luminous powder into the pitch-black abyss, lighting up what looked like a massive underground cavern. He pushed deeper into the shadows until something wet splashed right onto his hair. Glancing up, he knew instantly that was definitely not groundwater. It was straight-up drool. The ceiling was swarming with level 63 vampire bats, and Suho just flashed a cocky smirk at the terrifying welcoming committee. Without missing a beat, he unleashed intimidation. Like gravity had just been cranked to 10, every single flyer short-circuited and plummeted to the bedrock. Ice in his veins, he casually walked over to a struggling bat and impaled it with his shadow spear, letting the dark weapon feast on its essence. That single strike triggered a chain reaction, instantly flatlining the entire swarm. Swiping open his status UI, he could not help but feel smug. This cheese strat was absolute perfection for clearing out trash mobs. When you are packing an S-rank fear aura, level gaps literally do not matter. While basic hunters dumped points into just 2 main stats, Suho had completely cracked the color-coded matrix and was running a perfectly balanced, all-rounder build. Staring at his ridiculously spiked numbers, he briefly wondered if he was way too overpowered to be farming simple winged rats. Skimming through his kill feed out of pure curiosity, something weird popped up. Tangled in the pile of bat carcasses was a random blood slime. The poor thing must have been camping in the swarm and got absolutely vaporized by his fear shockwave as collateral damage. Honestly, this sweeping phase was getting way too easy. Still, he had to respect the raw utility of the skill. Sure, heavy hitters could tank fear debuffs, but unless a boss had immunity, this trick was totally broken. Minutes later, he hit the boss gates, adrenaline finally kicking in. He shoved the massive doors wide open. The second his boots hit the floor, his blade materialized in his grip, just in time to intercept a massive, mutated vampire bat, diving straight for his neck. Deflecting the heavy impact, the system tagged the beast as a Great King Vampire Bat. Suho spun the momentum into a lightning-fast counter-slash. Out of nowhere, a hulking golem blindsided him from the rear, forcing a desperate barrel roll. But scanning their auras, neither of these freaks gave off actual boss energy, just oversized mini-bosses. He took them both on, carving chunks out of the rock monster while pirouetting to deflect the bat's aerial dives. The golem wound up for a skull-crushing haymaker, but Suho smoothly drifted backward, planting his blade deep into the dungeon floor. The earth shattered, sending a massive shockwave ripping through the arena and ragdolling both beasts. He assumed it was an instant knockout, but as the debris settled, those tanks were miraculously still on their feet. The tempo cranked up, and reality hit Suho like a freight train. Raw physical damage was doing literally nothing against these high-tier health bars. It was finally time to pull out his trump card. The duo coordinated a vicious pincer move, lunging from opposite sides. Suho just smirked and digitized a second blade into his free hand. Through the blinding clash, the dust cleared to reveal a cold-blooded pose he had buried, one blade deep inside the bat, and pinned the golem with the other. Spamming regular combos was a waste of stamina, but the puzzle finally clicked. Their ultimate kryptonite? Solid silver supercharged with divine energy. Right on cue, a golden notification pinged his vision. Holy magic was fully locked and loaded. The silver steel lodged in the bat erupted with blinding light before a literal bolt of holy lightning shredded its throat, deleting the monster from existence. Suho stood dominant, pinning the burning carcass under his boot as it exploded into ash like a squashed bug. Divine damage was absolute nightmare fuel. The golem tried to rush him again, but Suho blurred forward, dicing the massive rock into literal pebbles with his glowing blade. He kept hacking until the system finally flashed the kill confirmation. Staring down at his shining weapon, he had to admit this setup was beautifully toxic. Taking an exclusive support class holy buff and slapping it onto a DPS build had given him an insanely broken tactical edge. Fusing silver gear with holy aura basically turned every single slice into an automatic, guaranteed critical strike. It was the ultimate cheat code for this specific dungeon. But right as he was chilling, a suffocating, heavy aura materialized right behind his back. Pivoting around, he knew instantly the actual dungeon master had entered the chat. The menacing figure stepped out of the shadows, leaking pure, unfiltered bloodlust. The system tagged him as the Cursed Prince, a hulking level 76 elite. The monster lost his mind, screaming about Suho trespassing on his turf and butchering his entire crew. The royal freak demanded Suho drop to his knees and beg for mercy. Yeah, right. Suho was here to bag a trophy, not kiss the ring. That disrespectful vibe absolutely triggered the prince. Roaring like a maniac, he flexed his terrifying aura, branding Suho as nothing but an arrogant punk. The boss threw a devastating opening punch, but Suho casually swatted it away like a fly, deadpan asking if His Royal Highness was finally done yapping. Skipping the comeback, the furious prince bypassed the words and savagely plunged his massive fist straight into the bedrock. Out of nowhere, the entire zone morphs into an absolute nightmare. A thick, blood-red fog explodes across the battlefield, blinding everyone. You literally couldn't see a thing through this suffocating aura. Suho drops into a defensive stance, totally aware this royal freak could blindside him at any second. A split-second chill crawls up his spine. Suho whips around, flawlessly parrying a lethal ambush from the lunging monster. The dungeon boss looks absolutely flabbergasted, completely mind-blown that a human read his moves. Not missing a beat, Suho claps back with a savage, sweeping strike. It looks like a fatal blow, but the prince just cackles. He violently trashes Suho, bragging that such a pathetic flex could never scratch his royal hide. Suddenly, the blue screen pops up. The cursed prince just triggered Blood Scream. Without hesitating, Suho slams his blade straight into the dirt and fires off Healing Spirit. A massive shockwave of pure energy erupts, and you can see the boss physically flinch from the holy blast. Watching his own cuts stitch back together in real time, Suho flashes a cocky grin, dropping the ultimate plot twist he's actually rocking a healer class. The prince looks down, absolutely shook. A deep gash stretches right across his stomach, proving Suho's previous attack definitely left a mark. Suho gears up for round 2, but the boss absolutely loses his mind. Furious that a measly mortal actually drew blood, he rushes in like a rabid beast. Suho doesn't back down an inch. Steel violently clashes against demonic claws as the two lock into a high-speed, merciless bloodbath of a combo. For a hot second, the arrogant prince actually thinks he has the upper hand, unloading an insane hurricane of frenzied slashes. But Suho literally vanishes into thin air, only to manifest right behind his prey. He sinks a flawless critical hit, sending dark blood spewing from the monster's mouth. As the villain staggers backward, Suho instantly zeroes in to keep the pressure on, but the stubborn boss refuses to fold, cranking his aura to the absolute max and launching himself back into the fray. The two titans slam together with earth-shattering momentum, ripping insane shockwaves across the entire arena. As the dust settles, the vibe completely shifts. The cursed prince's severed head just detaches from its neck, casually tumbling across the rocky floor. Suho strolls over like it is just another Tuesday. He squats beside the decapitated skull, openly roasting the guy for dropping so easily. Out of nowhere, the dead skull leaps up and sinks its fangs straight into Suho's palm. The totally not dead boss starts screeching inside his brain, demanding his life force and vowing to make him his eternal pet. Looking utterly grossed out, Suho yanks the biting head away and tosses it like garbage, literally comparing this ancient terror to an annoying summer bug, just taking a cheap nip. Then, the dread hits as a notification blares. Kin conversion initiated. Suho's legs immediately give out, crashing hard into the dirt, while his vital fluids rapidly siphon away. Extreme vertigo and a skull-splitting migraine hijack his senses, paired with a savage, burning thirst tearing up his throat. Echoing in his head, the gloating monster claims it is game over. But Suho just rudely tells the voice to shut its trap, completely tuning out the villain's yap. While the phantom voice rambles, our protagonist calculates his real plan to hijack this vampire perk. The sync rate needs to hit a specific sweet spot. Once he hits that exact benchmark, he plans to instantly nuke the infection with holy water. The second the transformation gauge smashes 50%, Suho realizes he is moments away from scoring the rare skill and grabs his flask. But suddenly, the glass completely explodes in his grip. The demonic voice cackles, flexing that they are in his personal territory, making all of Suho's tricks entirely useless. It clicks for the hero that this dungeon boss is playing chess, not checkers. The absolutely wrecked hallway is suddenly spotless, and the decapitated corpse has literally vanished into thin air. The entire stage just hard reset for Phase 2. Still refusing to take a loss, our guy scrambles to cook up a backup strategy. But the system flashes a brutal warning: his veins are officially turning toxic. The smug vampire, dripping with confidence, announces that this is the end of the line. But Suho drops the wildest smirk, revealing he has an ace up his sleeve. Right on cue, the interface lights up. Every single hidden requirement to unleash the secondary Dragon Blood ability just checked out. He had officially grinded his way to level 50 and successfully tanked an absolutely lethal psychological and physical trauma. A fresh pop-up blasts onto the screen. Dragon armor unlocked. Suho lets out a dark chuckle, knowing his timing is ridiculously clutch. The hostile transformation freezes dead in its tracks, as the panel confirms that Phase 2 of his draconic lineage is fully online. The legendary dragon armor fires up. He just scored the insane dragon endowment and dragon skin buffs straight from his new gear. The absolute millisecond that endowment buff kicks in, it completely firewalls the vampire virus and launches a full system cleanse. The toxic sludge running through his veins forcibly transforms back into flawless life force, deeply merging with his core, while the leftover dark magic gets absolutely incinerated by his overwhelming draconic aura. Suho flawlessly hijacks the secret abilities buried deep within the cursed genetics, feeling an immediate, insane boost in agility. Originally, he plotted to cheese this exact awakening by running a custom dungeon right at the level 50 mark, but instead, the game dropped the epic upgrade right in the middle of a boss fight. Peeking at his fresh stats, he zeroes in on Dragon Endowment. It is a god-tier passive skill meant strictly for draconic heirs, basically a massive flex of absolute royalty and unmatched dominance. When this bad boy is running, it makes him completely bulletproof against viruses and dark magic. Plus, it auto-loots any corrupted energy to cleanse, heal, and literally level up his body. The blue screens never bothered dropping hints about this hidden quest, but Suho got the cheat codes straight from Yongma. Because that vampire bite almost flatlined him, the system registered it as the ultimate awakening trigger, and while his draconic perk totally sanitized his veins, it perfectly kept the overpowered vampiric buffs intact. He scans one last tab, a wild new bloodsucker skill, currently locked up for future use. This was hard proof he'd almost crossed over into full bloodsucker territory. Now, he was left wondering if he'd actually copped the official vampire status. Snagging those vampiric traits was the main mission from the jump. But let's be real, mixing pure dragon veins with vampire blood is a recipe for internal chaos. They just don't vibe. Still, the perks he did secure were absolutely busted, so he wasn't complaining. Then, the system dropped a shiny new toy in his lap, Blood Weapon. We're talking about a ridiculously rare skill locked exclusively behind the noble vampire tier. The catch? It guzzles a massive amount of life fluid to even activate. Bro realized he was going to have to wipe out an absolute ton of monsters to fuel this thing. Plus, grinding his Phantom Shadow ability at the same time was the ultimate power play. Right on cue, the cursed prince started yapping to himself again. Suho immediately told him to zip it, completely over the dude's annoying, brain-melting gibberish. The prince was practically crying, throwing a fit over how Suho survived the bite, just endlessly rambling about broken curses. Bro was straight up calling himself trash. But right then, Suho felt the Shift Boss Phase 2 was officially kicking off, and the system's ping confirmed the nightmare. The Cursed King threw a massive pity party while his aura absolutely skyrocketed. Without warning, the ceiling cracked, dumping a torrential downpour of blood. Stepping out from that gruesome red waterfall, the king made his grand comeback. Now sitting at a terrifying level 80, he was radiating pure, unfiltered rage. He went on an absolute villain rant, swearing he'd vaporize anyone standing above him. He wanted to burn them to ash, smash them to pieces, and drag them straight down to the abyss. Massive, grotesque wings of blood ripped out of his back, paired with a bone-chilling shriek that shook the entire dungeon. Suho instantly felt the suffocating pressure drop as the magic power spiked. This wasn't the pushover boss from 5 minutes ago. This guy was completely reborn. He had evolved into an absolute menace. Wasting no time, the king blasted a shockwave of dark energy that wiped out the zone in a massive, blinding explosion. But as the smoke cleared, Suho was nowhere to be found. Bro basically teleported, hanging dead in the air right above the boss's wing. He dropped a heavy, devastating sword slashed straight down. Insanely enough, the cursed king didn't even flinch. The monster laughed it off, flexing that a weak scratch like that wouldn't put him in the dirt. Suho clocked it immediately. The boss wasn't just hitting harder, his combat IQ was skyrocketing. Using his wing like a giant club, the king swatted Suho out of the sky with terrifying raw strength. Flipping backward, Suho stuck the landing, and instantly knew he was in deep trouble. The boss closed the gap at lightning speed, forcing Suho to parry the savage flurry of hits head-on with his blade. Igniting his holy power, he straight-up promised the boss that pure divine energy would absolutely eclipse whatever dark buffs he was packing. But a split second later, the king literally shattered Suho's weapon into pieces, smirking as he bragged that holy tricks were officially useless against his new form. Suho dashed back to create space, his mind racing. If a divinely boosted blade just snapped like a cheap toy, bringing standard gear to this fight was basically a death sentence. Without missing a beat, he summoned his bloody sword. The second the cursed king laid eyes on it, he lost his mind, screaming at Suho to cough up the weapon, while diving in for a brutal kill shot. But Suho simply wrapped the blood sword in holy aura, and effortlessly carved right through the monster's attack. The boss was left utterly speechless, his brain short-circuiting, trying to process the counter. That's when it clicked for Suho. Blood weapons literally scale off the user's raw stats. Thanks to his current grind, this blade was already sitting comfortably at the insane red rank. He was holding the ultimate game over button. Desperate, the cursed king ripped a spear of blood out of thin air, promising to shred Suho to ribbons, and blitzed forward. The thrust was blindingly fast, but Suho morphed his weapon into a massive blood shield, stopping the spear dead, and leaving the king looking completely goofy. Suho coldly reminded him that he wasn't the only guy in the room who could shapeshift blood gear. With a slick flick of his wrist, the shield reformed back into a razor-sharp blade, and he cleanly separated the cursed king's head from his shoulders in one gorgeous cinematic swipe. The decapitated head hit the stone floor, still locked in an intensely arrogant smirk. Even as just a head, Bro had the audacity to claim that taking his neck meant absolutely nothing. Suho's response? He just punted the dude's head across the room like a soccer ball, before spawning his shadow spear and violently driving it straight into the earth. Instantly, jet-black chains exploded outward, viciously snaking around the severed head. Shadowbind was active. With the boss fully locked down, Suho knew it was time to put this raid to bed before the freaky monster tried any more respawn tricks. Right on cue, the system flashed a prompt confirming his vampire blood was fully online, and all that life force he just sucked up was securely banked inside the blood jade. While the boss's disembodied head threw a massive tantrum, screaming at him to back off, Suho was busy inspecting his new loot. Seeing the blood jade in real life was a trip, and this thing was already overflowing with pure crimson energy. If the lore from the Blood Monarch was true, this legendary item was literally invisible to everyone except its master. Fun fact, the infamous Blood Monarch used to be an average healer punching the clock at the Central Blood Institute, until he got tragically sucked into the hidden gate known as Blood's Decree. Bro actually made it to the final boss, but fumbled the bag against the cursed king, catching a nasty bite that infected him with the vampire curse. 99% of the time, that's a guaranteed game over. You get bitten, you mutate into a brainless mob, and the dungeon permanently locks you inside. But this guy was built different. He heavily spammed his healing spells to fight off the venom, completely glitching out the monster conversion process. Because he hacked the curse, he awakened crazy new vampire abilities that completely re-rolled his stat sheet. Packed with OP energy, he went back and soloed the Cursed King, cleared the impossible dungeon, and rebranded himself as the Blood Monarch, an S-tier global menace that had the whole world shaking in fear. Fast forward, and Suho had utterly humbled that same villain, milking him for every drop of intel on minion conversion, the mechanics behind blood weapons, and the secrets of the vampire lineage. But back in the present, the Cursed King's decapitated head was still throwing a massive fit, screaming about vengeance, and completely refusing to accept that he just got clowned. Suho just smirked, practically begging the guy to make a move. Right on cue, the system flared to life. Phantom Shadow synced up with the Cursed King's lingering aura, swallowing the whole thing down until absolutely nothing was left. Boom. The Blood Decree was officially wiped from the board. The interface flashed, confirming this hidden dungeon was fully conquered and crowning our boy the MVP. A glowing portal ripped open right in front of him. Stepping up to leave, Suho took a second to process the absolute insanity that just went down. Bottom line, Dragon Energy was on a completely different level. That whole kin conversion trick looked scary on paper, but compared to Dragon Blood, it was literally child's play. Still, knowing that Bloodsucker managed to slip away definitely rubbed him the wrong way. Suddenly, a massive system alert dropped with some bonus loot. After scanning his specific playstyle, the game handed him a tailor-made ability alongside a massive 10 free stat points just to sweeten the deal. The new skill was called New Blood, something completely off his radar, but the second he checked the specs, his eyes went wide. This was an absolute game changer for his entire build, and it did not stop there. He actually bagged an S rank, true original vampire ability. We are talking about tier 0 power that even the Blood Monarch could only dream of holding. Considering his current vampire stats capped out at a measly A+, with zero royal lineage attached. Suho pieced the puzzle together. This massive upgrade was 100% thanks to the new blood passive. His original strat was just to hoard high-level abilities, but the random number gods totally blessed him today. Still, he forced himself to stay grounded. Catching a massive win right now did not mean he was invincible just yet. Dungeon cleared. Bag secured. Suho let out a breath and locked in. He got exactly what he needed, and now it was time to shake things up over at Nexus. Cut straight to the towering glass skyline of the Nexus headquarters, where corporate hunters are buzzing through the halls. Miss Sue struts past the double doors, walking right up to a guy chilling casually in a high-backed leather chair. This is the Guildmaster, and he waves her right into his office. She drops the bomb instantly. Hunter Sung Suho sent a direct message. He is pulling up tomorrow to officially join their ranks. The boss physically freezes, echoing her words like his brain short-circuited. He stays facing the window, letting the reality sink in before finally ordering a full-scale prep phase. Spinning his chair around to reveal his intense expression, he warns her that Sung Suho is a total wildcard. They need to roll out the red carpet before the kid suddenly gets cold feet and bails. The camera pans up the slick city skyscrapers before snapping into a hyper-modern, ridiculously expensive living room. Suho walks through the front door, only to find Jinhui totally passed out on the sofa, literally drooling in his sleep. Suho just deadpans, asking why the guy is using his couch as a bed. The reporter groans, peeling himself up, and slurs that Suho literally beat the Tower of Tests today. Plus, since they are technically roommates for now, and literal partners in crime, a party was mandatory. Clinging to a half-empty bottle of liquor, he hypes up the fact that a massive flex like this desperately needed a toast. He whines about coming home to an empty apartment, but since he could not let a historic moment slide, he just started throwing back drinks solo. Suho watches this absolute mess of a human, pointing out that juggling all the recent drama must have burnt him out, but then he hits him with a smirk, promising that down the line, they are going to have way crazier things to celebrate. The drunk reporter blinks hard, asking if Suho is actually capping right now. Suho just tells him to chill out. The future is going to be wildly entertaining. Glancing over at the massive late-night feast spread on the table, Suho asks the tipsy dude if he still has room for round 2, even at this ungodly hour. Jinhui flashes a goofy grin, instantly down for it. With a high-end glass of wine sitting right by the takeout, Suho drops a quick review, mentioning that the underground hunter app Jinhui put him on is actually top tier. He also gives props to the penthouse, admitting the vibes are completely flawless. Between bites of food, Suho brings up the personal blog of his roommate, noting that his lifestyle content makes it painfully obvious that he is loaded with generational wealth. Pouring up some more wine, Jinhui gets brutally honest, casually dropping the craziest flex. He is not just new money, he is the youngest son of a literal cable dynasty. We are talking mega billionaire status. Caught off guard, Suho raises an eyebrow, asking if he actually belongs to the 1%, before casually taking a sip. Jinhui nods, deciding that since Suho trusted him with his crazy hunter secrets, it was time to spill some tea of his own. He confesses that his dad is literally the big boss of the massive Daisen conglomerate. Suho instantly connects the dots, figuring this guy is the golden child heir to the throne, but Jinhui shakes his head, killing the hype. He admits his dad has a whole army of kids with different women, and his own mom was just a secret side piece. Long story short, he is the hidden illegitimate son. He swears he has never leaked this lore to anyone, but since they are going to be running missions together for the long haul, he wanted zero secrets between them. Suho looks at him, totally stunned by the info dump, and asks if playing the gritty reporter is just some rich kid's side quest. Jinhui laughs, admitting that is honestly pretty accurate. And the crazy part? He actually loved the grind. He casually dropped that his old man bankrolled his entire lifestyle, but he was completely cut out of the will. Zero corporate power, zero boardroom pull. They even tried handing him the keys to a whole subsidiary branch, but he passed. He flat out admitted he was a killer journalist, but totally clueless when it came to corporate warfare. Suho raised his drink, smirking as he pointed out that, if nothing else, Jinhui was an absolute beast of a reporter. Beaming, the reporter soaked in the praise, confessing that in all his years, he'd never crossed paths with a hunter quite like Suho. Pushing their chairs back, both guys got to their feet. Jinhui threw out the idea of a toast to their chaotic duo, and Suho was all in. Glasses clinked, sealing the vibe. Cut to the next morning, Suho dragged himself through the luxury apartment, letting out a massive yawn, while Jinhui, already buzzing with energy in the kitchen, tossed him a bright greeting as he poured steaming water for his morning brew. Suho just stared, asking if this guy seriously planned on grinding through the weekend. The reporter just shrugged duty calls. Leaning against the window frame and rubbing the blur from his eyes, Suho muttered that going that hard on the drinks last night was definitely a rookie mistake. Jinhui just cracked up, brushing it off and saying it was a totally epic night. Still half asleep, Suho asked why he was already rushing out the door, chasing his next big scoop. The reporter shot back that he couldn't milk the Suho hype train for the rest of his career. Catching that, Suho just smirked, dropping a casual flex that this relentless hustle was exactly why he respected the guy. Jinhui froze, totally caught off guard by the random praise. Taking a slow sip of his drink, he bounced the question back. What was Suho's move for the day? Suho's eyes sharpened. He reminded the reporter that today was the exact day he'd been hyping up. Before the reality could even sink in, Jinhui blurted out, asking if he was actually marching into Nexus. Suho gave a slow nod. Last night, he smashed through to level 50, unlocked insane new perks, and decided it was finally time to make his play. Jinhui practically short-circuited. He completely missed his cup, splashing boiling water onto his hand, mind blown because literally 24 hours ago, Suho was sitting at level 40. He whipped around, eyes wide with pure shock, practically demanding an explanation. How in the world does someone skyrocket 10 levels in a single day? Suho just gave an effortless shrug, acting like it was Tuesday, and casually corrected him. Actually, he had hit level 51. The reporter just gaped at him like he was staring at a glitch in the Matrix, muttering that the deeper he dug into Suho's life, the more insane the guy's aura became. Suho cracked a half smile, pointing out that his wording sounded totally sus. Jinhui awkwardly scratched the back of his neck, prompting Suho to ask why he was suddenly eyeing him up and down. Out of nowhere, the reporter started shoving him toward the massive walk-in closet, laying down the law. If Suho was about to step into a heavy-hitting guild, he needed the absolute maximum drip to match. Suho instantly pushed back, arguing he didn't need to flex, and his streetwear was perfectly fine. But Jinhui wasn't having it. He insisted on hooking him up with a tailored fit and a luxury timepiece. When our boy tried to dodge the makeover, the reporter laid down the brutal truth at a powerhouse like Nexus. Your image is your weapon. Plus, he dropped a major reminder. Suho had free access to his entire supercar garage. Rolling up to a top-tier guild in a basic cab or taking the bus? That was a massive vibe killer. Cut to a high-end, ultra-wealthy district. A hyper-sleek, cherry-red sports car purred to a halt, instantly snapping the necks of every bystander on the curb. The butterfly doors glided up, and out stepped Suho, absolutely rocking a razor-sharp, custom-fitted suit. He adjusted his collar, cleared his throat, and silently admitted to himself that he actually looked incredibly boss. Right on cue, a polished executive stepped up, sliding him a sleek business card, and dropping his name, Bae Dong-hyuk, the top dog of Nexus. Suho flashed a smooth, calculated smile, took the card, introduced himself as On Suho, and shadowed the guildmaster right into the belly of the beast. Minutes later, he was locking eyes across a massive boardroom table with 3 heavy-hitting Nexus execs. Dong-hyuk kept his cool, smoothly pointing out that Suho's power leveling over the last few days had been insane. He probed, wondering if this massive glow-up had shifted his endgame, especially since our hero had openly bragged about snagging a cushy government job. Suho didn't even blink. He boldly stated his master plan hadn't shifted an inch. The big bosses instantly traded bewildered looks, leaving Sue to demand what the heck that was supposed to mean. Dong-hyuk leaned in, his eyes narrowing, questioning why on earth Suho would sign with a private squad if his ultimate dream was playing bureaucrat. Keeping it 100% real, Suho confessed that using Nexus was basically his cheat code to the top. He casually dropped the bomb that he was targeting the elite 5th rank exam this very year. One of the suits blinked, asking if he was literally just farming them for bonus street cred on his evaluation. Suho smirked, technically yes, but that was just layer 1 of his massive big brain strategy. If he just blindly simped for the Hunter Association, they'd think they held all the cards. But by aligning with a massive powerhouse like Nexus, he was forcing a bidding war. The minute the government realized other guilds were throwing crazy perks his way, they'd have to desperately up their own game. He made sure to add that while he wore the Nexus badge, he'd go absolute goblin mode for their operations, making the whole deal a massive win-win. Dong-hyuk soaked it all in, listening dead silent, as Suho swore to give them 100%. Finally, the guildmaster leaned back in his leather chair, letting out a breath, and admitted he respected the hustle. But he had just one burning question left. He reminded our hero that during their very first meeting, Nexus was literally on life support, and Suho was practically a nobody with 0 proven stats. Rolling the dice on him back then was a wild gamble, but at least it made sense. Right now, every single guild in Korea would literally go to war to recruit him. So the million-dollar question is, why did he walk straight through the doors of Nexus? Suho just hits them with a calm, mysterious smirk. The guild leader keeps pressing, admitting the kid's got insane talent, but his actual endgame? Totally in the dark. Dong-wook interlocks his fingers, leaning in heavy. He drops an ultimatum: drop the act and speak some truth, or this whole partnership is dead on arrival. Closing his eyes for a split second, Suho finally drops the bomb. He's got his own personal agenda. He throws it right back at Dong-wook, bringing up that massive public speech. You know, the one where the boss man swore on his life that Nexus would burn down every single gate across Korea. Suho lays out the facts. Nexus actually backs up the victims' families more than anyone else, and their obsession with wiping out the dungeons? Unmatched. He looks the leader dead in the eye, saying he felt the raw honesty in that broadcast. That pure conviction? That is exactly why he chose them over the competition. He wants to throw his entire arsenal behind their cause. Flashing a massive grin, he smoothly pitches the idea of keeping this alliance going. Even after he inevitably gets scooped up by the Hunter Association down the line, Dong-wook breaks eye contact, giving a slow nod. The logic tracks. He is buying it. But the boss isn't done. He challenges Suho, asking why the association is even a vibe when Nexus is already out here grinding non-stop to clear gates and fund hunters. Suho nods, giving them their flowers. But then, he drops the reality check. If Nexus genuinely wants to wipe these threats off the map permanently, they have to step into zones that would absolutely obliterate normal hunters. We are talking about the ultra-lethal, red-taped gates, strictly locked down by the government. The camera basically pans as his eyes lock onto a photo of a massive, heavily chained portal. Forget your basic mid-tier dungeons. The real endgame is the 5 great gates. And to even breathe near those, you need that sweet, sweet government clearance. But until he grabs that badge, every single boss he drops will have the Nexus logo flashing right next to his name on the breaking news. The shockwave from that hype, it would totally shatter the guild hierarchy in Korea, skyrocketing Nexus straight to the #1 spot. Dong-wook plants his hands flat on the mahogany. He fires back that this golden era only exists as long as Suho is actually on their roster. Suho just nods. That is exactly why he is promising to bleed for them while he is around. Suddenly, Suhei's eyes snap wide open. She practically chokes, asking if this dude already handpicked his squad. Following up on their last chat, Suho doesn't hesitate. He drops the first name on his draft board, Kang Dae-han. Suhei literally freezes in her tracks, demanding a playback, looking like her brain just blue-screened. Suho just gives a chill nod, casually flexing that he was the mastermind who talked Dae-han into pivoting to the tank role. Suhei violently kicks her chair back, standing up and raging. What the heck is the backup plan if the guy completely fails at being a meat shield? Not even flinching, Suho raises one hand to kill the noise. He tells her to take a breath. This wasn't a blind gamble. He ran the stats and analyzed every single variable. He points out that Dae-han absolutely annihilated the entrance exams. Suhei's face twists up into a bitter frown, the memories of those insane test scores flashing through her mind. Out of nowhere, the guy had snagged the silver medal, placing 2nd overall. She begrudgingly admits she was actually planning to send flowers to whoever coached him up, but Suho just hits her with a lazy shrug, playing it off like it was light work. Big mistake that just makes her blood boil even hotter. Breaking the tension, the third suit in the room finally clears his throat. He admits the pitch is absolute fire, but they need to squash some plot holes. If this kid seriously plans on raiding those lockdown zones, he better realize the feds have those spots guarded like maximum security prisons. Private guilds? They have a 0% chance of walking through the front door. With civilian lives on the line, the suit grills him on the exact infiltration strategy. Suho's expression goes ice cold. He tilts his head, asking if they are seriously doubting his firepower. Then he lays down the law. The ink only hits the contract once he drops the official VIP pass right on this desk, proving he is the real deal. Wait, he stops. The gears shift in his head, and he instantly upgrades the wager. Scratch the VIP pass. He is going to solo clear a sealed gate first. Only after the boss is dead do they sign the papers. The secretary is literally sweating bullets at this massive flex, muttering under his breath that this rookie is demanding a king's ransom. Unfazed, Suho doubles down, claiming this is a perfectly balanced trade. But the secretary's internal monologue is screaming. Sure, the kid is a generational talent, but on paper, he is still just a completely unranked rookie without a shred of official clout to his name.